Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Wednesday, and it is the midweek rundown. With you guys, as always, Brian Driscoll. I'm Trevor Trowbridge, back from vacation. Happy to be back. It's a little bit of FOMO during the vacation. Hopped into the show a couple times. Had to drop in a little super chat to go towards the IB fantasy camp football team, but we're back and happy to be back, Brian. Lots to talk about today in this midweek rundown, man.
There is. This is our new part of our new format. Last week I had to do the show by myself because somebody decided to take a vacation right in the middle of the off season. So I was down in Arizona. Interestingly, you and your wife were about 20 minutes from where Angela was last week and about an hour away from where a friend of ours who works with Angela was. So I had three people I knew that were down in Arizona last week. So it was a very interesting week. But I'm ready to talk some ball, Trev. Obviously, we're going to part of our midweek rundown is instead of focusing on like one or two like topics where we really take a deep dive into things, Wednesday's going to be more of like a kind of like a more quick hitters for us. Quick hitters for us are like a full show for some people, but like quick hitters for us. So we'll spend between like 20 to 40 minutes on various topics. And today, we're going to look at, there's a lot of preseason hype for Notre Dame, Trevor, from some places that we didn't necessarily expect it. We're going to discuss, is this legit hype? Meaning, do they really believe this about Notre Dame? Are there other reasons why we're seeing the Notre Dame bandwagon get jumped on a little bit? So we'll dive into that. And then part two of the show, we're going to talk about potential new look offensive line based on the video we saw the other day. We're going to talk about it and maybe what that means. Part three, we're going to do some predictions. We're going to do some breakout predictions. We're going to talk about the Notre Dame defense and go over some players that we are predicting will be breakout players for Notre Dame this year on defense. And then part four will be a mailbag. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And then just each week, if there's news to talk about, we'll dive into those different things. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm ready to rock and roll, Trev. So, and obviously, topic number one's a very interesting one, but more importantly, I'm glad to have you back. Sean held it down real well. We had a great show yesterday, but glad to have you back, ready to rock and roll.
Good to be back, man. I'm ready to sit down and talk some football. So let's talk about this. And this is kind of, I guess, say some uncharted territory for Notre Dame fans, at least for me, hearing about some of the hype that Notre Dame is generating going into the 2026 season. And yeah, I know I'm back, right? Right. But some of the hype that they're starting to generate is, Brian, it's conversations that you and I have had quite a bit about Notre Dame on this show, on the phone, whether we're texting about it in a group chat with some of the other guys or we're prepping for a show. We sit down and we talk a lot about what we think this Notre Dame team can be. But for the first time in my really Notre Dame fanhood, other outlets are starting to take notice. And it's not just other beats. We're talking about national talking heads. Bill Connolly, Brett McMurphy, Sports Illustrated, The Athletic, CBS Sports kind of had some backhanded stuff to say about Notre Dame, but they are generating a lot of buzz going into this season. And for me, firsthand, it's uncharted territory, but for the majority of what people are writing about, I agree with it. It's things that you and I and you and Sean and you and Vince have sat down and talked about countless times about what this team was going to look like in 26. Now I think some of that's starting to come to fruition.
I definitely think that's part of it, Trev. I think part of it is there's a genuine, okay, this team is talented and we think they have a shot. We see the Vegas odds and we see that, Vegas has them high. So clearly some big rollers and some big money people think that Notre Dame's a team that can win it all next year. And I do think there's a recognition. And for me, you talk about the first time your lifetime that you remember it. The last time Notre Dame was getting this much preseason hype to be a team that could win it all was all the way back in 2006. I think you were like 9 at the time when they got all that. That was the year after 2005. Notre Dame had gone 9-3. You had the Charlie Weiss breakout. You had Brady Quinn coming back. You had Samardzija, Tom Zbikowski. That team in 2005 was supposed, or 2006 was supposed to be really good as well. And so, it's been quite a while since Notre Dame has been able to generate that kind of legitimate preseason hype as like a championship contender. There's been other years where Notre Dame has been a team that was projected to be a playoff team, other years where Notre Dame was projected to be, a top 5 to 8 team, but never to the, I mean, even heck, Marcus Freeman's first season, Notre Dame was projected to be a top 5 team. So we've seen this kind of preseason hype where Notre Dame has been considered a top team, but I don't know that we've seen it to where Notre Dame is a team that people are predicting to win it all. And that's what makes this situation a lot different is that. So, you go back to, Trev, I know you were having some StreamYard issues, but the comment I made is the last time I remember Notre Dame being considered a team that people predicted to win it all was 2006 with Brady Quinn. I remember Brady being on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and just thinking about, it's been a while. It's been a while. There's no question about that. But
absolutely.
The question is, why is it happening? And that's what I think is an interesting conversation, because there's various reasons why.
Oh, absolutely. And it's Notre Dame. It draws a lot of attention, draws a lot of clicks, and that's another factor that plays into why Notre Dame's getting a lot of this attention. I don't think that it's a coincidence that, a mere 2 months after what a lot of people believe to be a snub from the college football playoffs, they start generating a lot of buzz of, guess who's on top? Guess who we think is going to win it all this year? The fan base, arguably one of the biggest in college football, their team that a lot of people believed had a shot to win it this past season.
Yeah. So what we learned through Notre Dame's playoff snub was 2 things. Number one is the Notre Dame fan base is still quite big and engaged. So they want to tap into that. But number 2 is other fan bases obsess about Notre Dame. And they can say that they don't all they want. But you say something about Notre Dame, and you're immediately going to get a reaction from other fan bases. More than you're going to get than I've seen from anybody. Like, I don't see people jumping into predictions about Oregon with the same emotional, nonsensical overreactions as what you get from Notre Dame. So let's be honest. Some of these predictions are business decisions. Can we be real about that? They're business decisions. They look at it and say, you want to get a lot of conversation, you want to get a lot of clicks, you want to make serious money on an article or on a tweet in February or late January, talk about Notre Dame. Talk about Notre Dame being a team that can win a championship. Talk about Notre Dame being a preseason number 1 team, and you're going to get your hype. I think, honestly, Trev, if we're being honest, that is absolutely a part of why you're seeing a lot of this hype coming from the national media.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, you look at what CBS Sports put out, and I actually wrote an article kind of reacting to Notre Dame's ranking. Obviously, Notre Dame has the opportunity to earn a bye with the new playoff rules that went into effect at the start of the 2025 season, but they had Notre Dame as a top 14. But then the issue is when you go and you look at it, CBS Sports did something where they kind of catered to both sides. They got the Notre Dame fans to click on it, I being one of them, seeing that Notre Dame got a bye in their 2026 playoff projections. And then you dive into the reasons as to why. And then it caters to the anti-Notre Dame crowd.
Correct.
Well, they made it in because their schedule sucks and because they're automatically in. It's like, okay,
right.
Well, you put them at second, so it's not like the MOU is really going to go into effect that much.
Right.
But you have outlets like that are playing to both sides, because what does that ultimately do, Brian? Like we've talked about so many times before, it'll get clicks. And the best way is to get clicks from both sides, not just one, unfortunately.
Well, and I think that's the secret sauce that they've always known that to a degree. But I think that this playoff situation really played into that a lot. Like I've never seen, like, my Twitter feed, for example, was like, just every time I'd say something, you just get all these fan bases that jump in. Oh, no, join the conference. You didn't play anybody. My favorite was when USC fans would jump in and talk about how Notre Dame didn't beat anybody. Like, you idiots really don't understand what you just said, did you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, even you're admitting your program's garbage. You know what I mean? Come on, man. Let's be serious. And it's usually like low IQ takes, but that doesn't matter. You don't get brownie points or extra dollars from Twitter because the people that engage with you are really smart or make really good points. It's just about engagement. And they understand that when you talk about Notre Dame, you're going to make money. That's just the reality of it. Notre Dame is a moneymaker. And, I think it would be naive if we didn't at least acknowledge that that's a part of what's driving some of this. Now, I don't think that's driving everybody. And I don't think it's making people to think that Notre Dame would be the 10 seed or the 11 seed or the 12 seed, put Notre Dame number 1. But if you think Notre Dame's number 4 or number 3, hey, why not? And you can do it in your way too early. And then let's see where their predictions are when we get to July and August. Let's see if they still have Notre Dame as the team that they're going to pick in July and August. But right now in February, why not? Why not talk about it? And so I think there's certainly something to that. Like when I look at Brett McMurphy, he's become such a clickbait fiend. Like I have no thought of he believes what he just said. When I look at Bill Connolly talk about Notre Dame being number 1, I don't particularly love his SP Plus model, but I've never found him to be someone who says things just to get clicks. I think he values his model being respected. I don't, but I appreciate the work he puts into it. But so his thing was not necessarily like, hey, here's what I think about Notre Dame. It was, here's what the model's telling me is going to happen. Yeah, Notre Dame is the 4 seed, had Notre Dame winning it all. So I thought that part was very interesting too, Trev. But I also think there's a level of, let's give some credit to the people as well. Let's not completely hammer them. Like, listen, they're making business decisions. There's no question about it. To the degree, we'll see. But I also think it would be unfair if we were also to say that's the only reason that they're making these predictions about Notre Dame. I do think there's a level of this football team is really good. And they understand that. And I was talking with, I think it was it you or Vince last night? But I was talking with one of you guys, and I said, look, I think part of this is there's some people that really studied Notre Dame going into the playoffs in ways they hadn't before. And when they started watching the film and looking at the numbers and seeing how dominant they were, like, dude, this team's really good. And when they saw Miami make the run that they made, and they're like, dude, Notre Dame played terrible against Miami and still almost beat them. You know what I mean? Like, I think there was a level of appreciation that some gained for Notre Dame after really kind of taking a dive into them. And I think when you look at how many Notre Dame's players came back, I think that you're starting to see more people understand that this team is actually really talented. I'm surprised that many people have that opinion, because I was assuming that most of the reporters were just going to look at the fact they lost Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, and that's one of 3 players whose name they even know on Notre Dame's football team, and that was going to be the reason why, they're going to struggle. I mean, look at Malachi Fields blown up at the Senior Bowl. How's Notre Dame going to replace a guy like that? You know what I mean? Like, they're going to have the top 2 draft picks at running back are going to be Notre Dame guys. They're not going to be able to recover from that. It's Notre Dame, and so I am a little surprised by it in that regard. But I do think some of it, though, is genuinely they think Notre Dame's going to be very good. Maybe they don't think they're going to be, win it all, but I do think there's a level of they think this team is going to be pretty good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're starting to get into the conversation of, why we think the hype is legit. And when you look at Notre Dame as a team, there's a level of, I guess you could call it, undeniability when you look at what this team did. With a redshirt freshman at starting quarterback who returns to the team in 2026, contrary to some of the, transfer portal stories that, people have heard, not necessarily about CJ Carr. That's just the day and age of college football now. But I do think that there's a level of undeniability with this team. Marcus Freeman, one thing I find interesting is people are willing to separate Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame. There's a lot of people that say, I love Marcus Freeman. I would love for him to be my coach. But then in the same breath, also talk about how Notre Dame is irrelevant and how they're not going to win anything. And so I think what we're also starting to see now is kind of a mesh of the two. Marcus Freeman is now going into his 5th year at Notre Dame. And people are like, okay, a lot of the success Notre Dame has had, he's driven. And he deserves that recognition because he has. He did more in 3 years than what the previous coach did in his last over decade regime in South Bend. And so I think we're starting to see a little bit of blend between the two now. People not necessarily separating, hey, great coach, great facilities, great players, but we're still kind of looking at the golden helmet and the logos on the jerseys. Now I think we're starting to see a mesh of the two. So to your point, credit is deserved, or credit is worth giving to some of the writers that do put that out there, clickbaity or not. I think when you just look at the overall makeup of this team, combined with their journey to the playoffs in 2026, talking about their schedule, and combined with what they've done the last 2 years, you kind of have to just look, if you want any sort of respect as a sports person, you kind of have to look at this team and say, yeah, they're just going to be really good. No matter which way you spin it, whether you have them at first, whether you have them at fourth, whether you have them at fifth and playing at home in the first round of the playoffs, whether you have them playing in the college football playoff semifinals, it's undeniable the fact that Notre Dame is one of the 4 best teams going into college football. And you and I would strongly argue that they're not fourth and they're probably not third. So very interesting conversations leading up, but the hype is deserved. And there's areas to it that other writers are playing into that I see very much eye to eye with. That's for sure.
There's no question. I think when you look at these, Trev, let's kind of just go through these here real quick. First and foremost, you've got Brett Murphy's. It's like, look at his real quick. He's got Notre Dame number 1, and he's got Oregon number 8. He's got them beating Oregon, number 8 Oregon in the quarterfinals. Then he has number 1 Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. Then he has number 1 Notre Dame beating number 4 Miami in the Orange Bowl, which is very interesting because that's down in Hard Rock. And then he's got him beating number 1 Notre Dame over number 2 Georgia in Las Vegas. That'd be a very interesting path, Trevor. Bill Connolly has Notre Dame beating USC in the quarterfinals. Number 4 Notre Dame beating number 5 USC, with USC beating Hawaii in the first round, which would be so poetic. USC gets in at number 12, beats Hawaii, only to get into the quarterfinals to get smacked by Notre Dame. That'd be so great. And then he's got Notre Dame beating number 9 Oregon, and then he's got Notre Dame beating number 2 Georgia, which I thought was interesting. I thought that was very interesting. So Pat Forty and Brian Fisher from SI both have Notre Dame getting to the title game, but they have them losing. 40 to Ohio State, and then Fisher to Notre Dame. So you're definitely saying a lot of love. Even people who don't pick Notre Dame to win it all, they're predicting them to get to the championship game. And again, I do think part of this is because they see that. But I think some of these paths were very interesting. Like, what would you think of a path, Trev? Which one do you like better? Do you like McMurphy, so basically beating Oregon, Miami, and Georgia, or Connolly, who's got him beating USC, Oregon, and Georgia?
See, I would love for Notre Dame to give USC the absolute business in the postseason, but I kind of like the rematch down in Hard Rock from 2025. A lot of storylines out of there. It'd be a rematch from the regular season this year as well. I think I like McMurphy's, honestly, because I also find it hard to believe that USC is going to make the playoffs this year. They might. Their schedule's a little bit tougher. I don't know if across the board they have the personnel to make the playoffs this year on the team, but I like Brett McMurphy's. I do. I like beating Miami down in the Orange Bowl.
I do too. I'd probably go with Bill Connolly's matchup wise, because we were talking about this yesterday. Somebody asked in the mailbag yesterday, what would be your ideal playoff scenario? And Sean's was he wanted to beat Miami again. And I was like, they already beat Miami. He's like, no, I want to do it twice. I want to beat them twice. And his thought was, well, you beat them at our place. No, everybody's going to be like, well, and he's like, I want to beat them on a neutral field where there's no excuses, And I said, oh, okay, I get that. But I kind of feel like Notre Dame would have already beaten Miami. How fitting would it be if USC gets into the playoff as number 5 seed? They play the number 12 team. I said earlier number 12. I meant number 5. They got to play number 12, who's Hawaii. Like, nobody's going to give them any respect for that win. And then their reward is they've got to go play Notre Dame in like the Fiesta Bowl or the Cotton Bowl or something like that and get absolutely smacked by Notre Dame. It's like, oh, great, you beat Hawaii. That's what you dropped the Notre Dame rivalry for, to beat Hawaii, only to get smacked on a neutral field. You could have had Notre Dame in L.A., and you could have knocked Notre Dame out of the playoffs, if you'd have been able to play them and beat them. But and then you still get to beat Oregon in the semis, and then you get to beat Georgia. So I wish there was a path that didn't include Oregon, because I don't know what it is. I just don't care about Oregon. You know, like it's like if you beat them, everybody's gonna be like, "Well, yeah, you're Notre Dame, you're supposed to beat them." But if you lose to them, it's like, "Oh, a new power's arrived." You know, it's just like I don't know why it is. I just don't care about Oregon. But some of the other ones were interesting. Pat 40 had Notre Dame beating number 7 Miami, who beat number 10 USC in the first round. Then he has them beating number 3 Indiana, and then he has them losing to number 1 Ohio State. I thought that was interesting. Brian Fisher had Notre Dame beating Georgia 3-6 in the quarters. Then he has them beating Texas in the semis, and then he has them losing to Oregon in the championship game. So that'd be an interesting one as well. Be a very interesting one as well. But like, look, here's the end of the day, Trev. It's fun to talk about. I think this is good for Notre Dame, though. Some people may think this stuff doesn't matter. I think it matters. Look, you guys have to understand who does Notre Dame care about when it comes to the perception of their program. It's not so much the fans, and this is a case where I don't know that it really matters that the perception of the program. I don't think that you need to try to impress your fans in that regard. They're your fans. What I'm referring to is you have to worry about your perception when it comes to the people who don't already love and support you. And what are you doing to change that perception? And there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. But the reason that your perception matters so much is because the players you're trying to recruit to come to play in your program, you want them to have a high opinion of your program. Tion Gray talked about that in his press conference today. You know, one of the comments that he made, Trev, in the press conference was, I'm going to pull it up here real quick, but he talked about he wanted to go closer to home, but he also wanted to go somewhere where he could compete for a championship. You know, and you know, this was in the part upstairs. I'm going to try to find, you know, what he said, but he talked about wanting to go closer to home. He said, I wanted to earn a bigger role, but I still wanted to compete for a national championship. I wanted to be closer to home. Notre Dame is one of the best teams to go back to the Natty. So I wanted to come here and be part of that run, but also just the coaches and the strong traditions that they have. Like, clearly he had an understanding of what Notre Dame was capable of. Francis Brew talked about how impactful it was when, you know, Notre Dame comes to play them at Pitt. Game day comes. Like, the kids never had a thought of game day coming to Pitt till Notre Dame comes to town. And he talked about how many Notre Dame people he saw. He's like, it was a different environment for him. And so those things matter. Another player talked about watching Notre Dame play Ohio State in the championship game. So when you see On3 and you see ESPN and you see Sports Illustrated, I don't know how much impact Sports Illustrated has anymore, but ESPN and On3 certainly do. When he talks about when they talk about Notre Dame as a title contender, that's being seen on socials by the 27 class, the 28 class, the 29 class. And it helps you now between now and the season, because guess what? There's nothing else you can do to impress them other than you've got your recruiting pitch. But when things like this start happening, those young people take notice of that, and it's good for the program. And then if you can back it up with a strong season, that's how you build yourself into being a program that when young people talk about who are the best teams in the country, top recruits, oh, it's Notre Dame, it's this and that's how that happens. It's not just that one-time run and then now you're not talked about anymore. It's that people are starting to talk about how loaded this roster is. I mean, even in some backhanded ways. Well, on paper, they're really loaded. You know, it's just like there's backhanded compliments that people make, but they're still recognizing that this team is very talented. And so even if it's for the wrong reasons, good. It's good for the program. And I'm not one of those people that just because Nick Saban said it's all rat poison, it's all rat. No, it's not. How you handle it could be rat poison. But if you have the right attitude on this is good for your program when you're trying to ascend to that level. Nick Saban could say that after 4 titles. You know, I think that there needs to be an acceptance of, hey guys, we are this good. Now let's go live up to it. But from a perception standpoint outside the program, I think this is good for Notre Dame, that you're getting this kind of attention and this kind of love. And the debate, because kids are going to look around like, dude, everybody's talking about Notre Dame. Either love them or hate them. And as you and I both know, Trev, when you're a teenager and you're of a certain attitude, you kind of want to play for the team that everybody hates. And to a degree, Notre Dame's becoming that. So I do think this stuff matters. People say, oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it kind of does. Not in how Notre Dame's going to perform in 2026. It has no impact on that. But as far as the team's perception, the program's perception, I think it does matter. I really do.
No, you and I see that very much the same, and it's everything combined. It's on 3, it's Sports Illustrated, it's The Athletic, it's ESPN, it's CBS Sports, things that get plastered all over social media all the time. It's not just, and yeah, we talk about it on this show all the time. Notre Dame's a favorite on FanDuel to win the national championship, and we can continue to have those conversations. I'd be lying if I said I already didn't put a little bit of something on it just to see if it comes true here in about a calendar year. But look, the perception matters to people that don't necessarily have a formulated opinion on Notre Dame. I agree with you that it also helps with the people who are kind of anti-Notre Dame. But one thing that I kind of learned about this job when I first started doing it was not everybody has strong feelings either way, especially players, especially recruits or players in the transfer portal. They don't have as strong feelings about Notre Dame as what fans do. Like for us, we are very versed in it's like, the lore of Notre Dame, 11 national champions and X amount of Heisman Trophy winners and house that Rockne built. I mean, I guarantee if you sit down and ask some player in the transfer portal who Newt Rockne is, I don't even know if they'd be able to give you an answer. And that's not a slight to them or any sort of level of intelligence. That's just, it's kind of the lore of, I couldn't tell you the years that Bear Bryant coached. I know he coached before Nick Saban did back in the day. I'm assuming probably sometimes in like the 50s to the 70s. But to an Alabama fan, that'd be like, how do you not know when Bear Bryant coached it? But to players, it's different.
Right.
And so when they look at that, that's the thing that I learned and why this perception matters so much is it's to the players that haven't formulated an opinion about Notre Dame. Some kid growing up in Texas and they've heard about the Longhorns and the Aggies and Baylor and Texas Tech. And then they hear about this school up in South Bend, Indiana. It's like, yeah, I know what Notre Dame is because I like college football, but I'm not, I know they were great back in the day. Some of my family members used to talk about them, but it's not as strong feelings as what fans have. And so I'm with you, man. That's why ultimately that perception matters so much is because it's helping other people formulate opinions who are relatively unbiased going into that situation. I don't think it's a coincidence this year that after the 2-year stretch that Marcus Freeman has had, they've attracted now recruits in the portal, not even just in recruiting. 2 receivers from Ohio State, a defensive tackle from Oregon, a cornerback that elected to leave the tutelage of Deion Sanders to come to South Bend after watching what they've produced the last couple of seasons, on top of having the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country by On 3. Now, I don't think that's a coincidence. Yes, I'm with you, man. Perception matters a ton. Very huge when it comes to this conversation, man.
I'll just say this as we kind of wrap up, Trev. I agree with everything you said. I just want to point out Bear Bryant. Just a couple quick things, Trev. He coached at Alabama from 1958 to 1982. So 50 to 70s. I just want to point out to people that Bear Bryant coached against Notre Dame 4 times. He went 0 for 4. I just want to make sure we point that out. They lost in 1973, 1975, 1976, and 1980. So one of those years that Bear Bryant and Alabama claim a national championship, they got beat by Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. Great. Lou Samoji's favorite game. That's what he was explaining to me. He would actually that was one of the few times you'd see Lou get excited talking about Notre Dame football. And what I mean by that is Lou just was a very calm guy, but you could get him to stop working. I remember him getting excited and saying, come here. And he brings up a YouTube page he had saved, and it's the 73 Sugar Bowl. And he's talking about the why they made the call, and it wasn't even the starting tight end, and he only had X number of catches that year, and he just started getting all fired up. That's the era he grew up in. But yeah, I just want to point out that Bear Bryant's 0 for 4 against Notre Dame. Was 0 for 4 in his career. So I just thought that just was something I think would be interesting to point out. So just wanted to make sure that people knew that. So.
Well, I can think of no other way to end segment 1, Brian. So before we move on to part 2.
Well, real quick though, but it's interesting because I had looked to see if he had played Notre Dame when he was at Texas A&M or Kentucky, and because I know Notre Dame's got a little bit of a history with Texas A&M, Kentucky, but I did not know this. Notre Dame has never played Kentucky in football, and the first time I did learn this recently, but the first time Notre Dame ever played Texas A&M in football was 1988 in the Cotton Bowl. The first time they ever played in the regular season was in 2000. the first 3 meetings were in 88, well, end of the 87 season, end of the 92 season, and end of the 93 season. They played all 3 years, and they played in the Cotton Bowl. So they've only played A&M and Notre Dame have only played each other 4 times in the regular season, but they've never played Kentucky in football. So he unfortunately didn't get a chance to coach against Notre Dame at those other schools. Maybe he'd have had better luck, but most likely not. Because he was at Kentucky from 46 to 53. There were some stretches during that time when Notre Dame wasn't losing to anybody. You know what I mean? So probably wouldn't have had a whole lot more success. But yeah, D-Rock Irish said I watched all those Bama Bear versus Notre Dame moments, classics. So just wanted to point that out. 0 for 4 against Notre Dame.
Love that.
Now, if only the new coach can have that same kind of record against Alabama, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. We don't need to talk about what the rest of the coaches did after that. We don't need to go there. We don't need to go.
No.
It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what they did in 2020 or 2012.
Yeah. Different conversation for a different day that I won't be taking a part of.
That's I won't be, yes. Absolutely right.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show. You guys know what to do. Be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. But now that's the bulk of the offseason. The best way to stay in tune, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We're going to talk about the offensive line, a hot topic of discussion really the last couple of seasons. And we are believers that a lot of the drivers of success that Notre Dame is going to have this year, especially as an offense, obviously, is going to live in the trenches. And that's a common theme that we've seen from really the last 2 national championship winners on down, but using the last 2 because of the 12-team playoff model. The trenches have played a big role in who's made it there and who has ultimately walked away with the trophy. Notre Dame has a lot of potential at the skill position. They have a returning starting quarterback, but some of the questions are going to be along the offensive line. 2 of your team captains were on the offensive line in 2025. They have both departed now for the NFL. Earlier, and my days are kind of starting to get mixed up here, still kind of getting back in the swing of things, but it was either late last week or early this week. There's a video that was put out on CJ Carr's Instagram which by the way, sidebar, these are one of the benefits of why I love NIL and what this does for teams and what it does for athletes. Again, different conversation for a different day, but he distributed Bose headphones to the entire offensive line unit. But within that video, Brian, putting on a little bit of a...
Well, let me just interrupt you there first. I'm a little frustrated that I didn't get some free Bose headphones from CJ. I had the dude ranked as a 5-star coming out of high school. I get no love for that. I get no freebies. I'm disappointed in CJ. I'm very disappointed. I thought 5-star ranking should have at least gotten me like a free Bose case at least. You know what I mean?
Or at least the Bose earbuds.
Seriously,
maybe not the
like
over
for the
ear.
show. I mean, come on, man. I'm using old school headphones here, CJ. Hook a brother up, man. Come on now.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know what? Matter of fact, I've been talking about how Jadarian Price is one of the best lateral cutters on the team that I've seen. I can't get a Johnny Dang chain. Not anything.
Seriously. Yeah.
Nothing.
You're talking about how you should be a first-round draft pick. I get nothing, man.
We'll have to run that up the chain of command next time we get.
This is what we get for just giving honest opinions, man. Instead of like working out deals to get stuff in return for our opinions. This is terrible.
Oh man, I know. We'll have to run that up the chain of command next time you and I are both on campus. But within that video, Brian, it came to our attention and to the attention of a lot of other people of a specific order of what some of the offensive linemen were sitting in. And that definitely raised a lot of interesting conversation talking points. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I was not sure I even wanted to talk about this today, Trev, but I was like, you know what? It's kind of a perfect midweek rundown type of topic. And that is, so in the video, and I had to have some people explain this to me because I was like, are you sure? But basically the way it was in the offensive line room, and there's 5 chairs per row. And it's front row, second row, third row, and there must have been a 4th row that we couldn't see. So I'm looking at it in the front row. You can see Joe Wadding right in the middle. Right behind him is Ashton Craig, and right behind him is Cam Herron. And then to the right of Joe Wadding is 2 guys to play guard, and then the 2 guys outside of the guards are 2 offensive tackles. Like, okay. Row 3, you've got Cam Herron at center. You've got, or not in the center of the row, excuse me. Then you've got Peter Jones to his right, who's a guard. And then to his right is Owen Strebig, who's a tackle. Well, the interesting thing was then in the middle, you have Ashton Craig to his right, Sullivan Absher to his right, Gerby Lambert. Well, we already knew that Gerby was moving to tackle. I've already been told that. But then immediately to his left, in what the position would be of a left guard, was Anthony Knapp. And to his left was Will Black. Now, this may not mean a thing, but it was at least something that we wanted to kind of bring up as an interesting discussion point of, could it be that this is at least a possibility for what they're doing? Because for all we know, the next day in the meeting room, Will Black could have been at right guard. And, I mean, we don't know the answer to that. But I just found it interesting that we saw that.
It's definitely one of the things where it gets a little tinfoil hatty, but in the spirit of this show, it does spark an interesting question, because there are some uncertainties about Notre Dame's offensive line going into this season. And that is something that we put a lot of emphasis on, about the level of success that this team can have will be dictated in the trenches. And we have spent a lot of times, Brian, on the phone, over text, on the show, talking about what we believe could be a potential lineup. Now, to your point, it could all just be a coincidence that from left to right, Will Black, Anthony Knapp, Ashton Craig, Sullivan Absher, and Gerby Lambert just all decided to sit together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if we trot out there the first day of spring practice,
that's when I'll get really fired up, for sure. For sure. Somebody asked me, so let's have a real practical conversation about this, Trev, because it's obviously fun to talk about. And as Andrew Gilmore is the first one to point it out to me, and he said that the first person pointed out to him was Jacob Carr, who's in the chat. And Jacob, by the way, I know I was told that you have a parent on the board, but you're not on the board, bro. You're missing out. You got to sign up. Somebody in the chat was like, "Oh, you got to watch these breakdowns by some other guy." Did a breakdown. CJ Carr. I was like, "Why would you need to watch that when you got all the breakdowns we've done? We've done way more than him, and we're not people that sit there and MF Notre Dame and say screw Notre Dame and F Notre Dame, and they need to join a conference." I'm just saying. So, but it's like, okay, why do this now? And my whole point was, well, I think I forget who it was, but like, why wouldn't they do it? Like, make Anthony, Will Black earn it or whatever. I said, well, if you're going to do it, now is actually the perfect time to do it. If you're going to try it, March and April is a perfect time to see how Will Black looks at left tackle. It's the perfect time to see how well Anthony Knapp looks at guard. It's the perfect time to see how they work together. Like, you don't want to wait till the fall to start trying that, or halfway through spring. Do it now. And then let's say Will Black struggles, or Anthony Knapp just doesn't look comfortable at guard. And then the next day in practice, you just flip them to see how it looks, and it's cooking. I mean, it's just, man, we just moved Knapp out to tackle and Black in the guard, and man, the next 2 days of practice, they were killing it. Maybe that ends up being the proper lineup. But if you're going to try this, now's the time to try it. Now's the time to do it. Now's the time to see how they look individually at those positions, and then how they look as a unit. I mean, I expect Will Black to look great because Joe Rudolph said in the fall that he already knows that Will Black can play tackle. So I assume this is more about getting it. I'm just not going to let that go. I'm seriously just never going to let that go. But no, I love it. I really do. And when you look at Ashton Craig, I think it's good too, because you've got a more athletic guy next to you now who moves his feet really well. And this is a kid who's lost to 2 season-ending injuries because people have rolled up on his leg, behind. But it just got me thinking, man, like what could this line be? What could this unit be? And so that's kind of why we're talking about it. I mean, it's a good topic for February. And the first question I'll ask Trev is, if this is legit, because again, we don't know. I don't want this to come across as like they're saying it's going to happen. We don't know. But it's also not a complete coincidence that guys were lined up. It could have just been that's where they were on that particular day. On other days, it's been different. And it could very well be that. But I also don't want to keep repeating that this is just a hypothetical. So we're saying it now, and now we can just have the conversation. But if this is the direction that they go to kick off spring, and when we get to the first day of spring practice and we see the offensive line lining up and we see Knapp working at guard and we see Will Black working to tackle, what does that say about Joe Rudolph? I think that's the first question that we ask ourselves when we're having this conversation. Like, has he come around? Has he figured it out? Has he always been open to it? But it's like kind of what my sources told me. Somebody had to give you a reason to move Anthony Knapp off a left tackle. The kid started for you as a true freshman and you went and played for the national championship. If I'm going to move that kid off left tackle, I need to have someone give me a real reason why. Was that always his mindset? Has he changed his attitude? There's a lot of different ways to look at it, Trev, but that's the first thing that comes to mind for me is, what does this say about Joe Rudolph if this is something because you've now moved 3 guys. You've kicked Black out the left tackle, because where did we see him play in the games last fall? Left guard, right tackle.
Yeah.
We see him play a snap at left tackle. That's not something that I really want to get into right now because I want to stay in a good mood. We're seeing Anthony Knapp go from left tackle, where he's played every single snap of his college career has been at left tackle. But we're also seeing Selvin Absher kick back to right guard. Now, he was mostly a right side offensive lineman in high school. And you're seeing Gerby Lambert kicked out to right tackle. So that's a lot of movement. So if you're going to have that much movement, you do it day one, in my opinion. But what does it say about Joe Rudolph if this was something that he said, hey, this is what we're going to try out going into fall camp?
Yeah, I mean, big picture.
Spring practice, excuse me.
No, yeah, I get what you mean, man. I mean, look, it tells me, one, big picture, that he's willing to kind of fall into the ideology of his head coach of being willing to challenge everything. It would be very easy for an offensive line coach to look at the unit that he had and say, look, I have a guy going into his junior year. He was a true freshman All-American at left tackle in 2024, and he now has 27 career starts under his belt protecting the quarterback's blind side. It would have been very easy to just stick with the status quo and keep him where he was at. But what this shows me is not only is he willing to continue to put the best 5 on the field, because you and I, along with a lot of people in Irish Breakdowns community, believe that Notre Dame's offensive line will be at its strength with 54 on the field somewhere. We just don't think that that's at left tackle.
Not even a debate. That's not even close. Discussion. Barring injury, Anthony Knapp is a good enough player to start for you somewhere. It's 100%. About getting him in the position where he can maximize his own unique talent. And we just feel that's inside.
Absolutely. So this shows me that he's willing to challenge kind of that status quo of like, hey, look, I saw Gerby Lambert be really good at right guard. We're going to keep him there. Knapp has started 2 years at center, just finished an entire regular season. We're going to keep him there too. And then we're just going to kind of have an open battle for left guard, right tackle. And with Ashton Craig back healthy eventually. What this shows me is he's willing to look at what the makeup of the room is and say, okay, at the bare minimum, we know Anthony Knapp can be a serviceable left tackle, and we know what Gerby Lambert can do at right guard. Let's now see how we can get the best 5 on the field. It's challenging that status quo piece that's really stuck out with me about Joe Rudolph. If we walk out to practice at fall, and look, we don't get to see every practice in the spring. So it could be a situation where we kind of see the status quo on day one because it's day one. And who knows, the next practice, it might be something new. We don't know. We just won't know.
And if we see something different in day 2, it doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't where they want to go. As we mentioned, correct. The beginning of spring practice is the time to experiment with those things.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do all that. But I actually think if this is the direction they're going to go, I think this makes a lot of sense. I think this, and I don't think this move has anything to do with the health of Charles Jagasaw or anything like that, because Charles Jagasaw was going to play guard and was going to play right guard at Notre Dame if he's healthy. I think what this shows is that Joe Rudolph understands, and I'm happy to hear this, that he understands, and we saw a little glimpse of that last year when he was willing to move Gerby Lambert inside the guard when Jagasaw went down. Because no, Jagasaw hasn't played, or Lambert hasn't played a second of guard, as far as I know, at Notre Dame. But it's like, look, dude, we got to get our 5 best on the field, and with Jagasaw down, I think Gerby Lambert might be one of those 5. And then, of course, we saw what he did last season. I'm still shocked he didn't earn redshirt freshman All-American honors across the board. He only got, I think, 1 service. I think only one named him a freshman All-American. But uh, uh, you're moving everybody around. I mean, Ashton Craig's the only guy in that first group that's at the position he played last year. You're moving Gerby out to right tackle. There's a gamble there. You don't know what he can do as a starter at right tackle. You do know he can do at guard. You're flipping sides with Sullivan Absher. I hope and pray that this offseason they finally let Sullivan Absher play one position. Just like let him play right guard. And I mean, in left guard too. Like right, left guard, it's similar. But like don't have him also cross-train at tackle and center and all. Let that kid learn one position. And so I do think if this is the direction they're going to go, now Will Black has to earn and Sullivan Absher has to earn opportunities, because you can easily, if Will Black doesn't pan out, you can just bump Anthony Knapp back outside at the last week of spring practice and you're fine. He'll, it's like riding a bike to a degree. So those are things that I look at, Trev, and I say, boy, that would be encouraging for me. The other thing I think about is, the other question about this, Trev, is what does this say about the potential of the O-line? And I think that's the thing that probably gets me the most fired up, if I'm being completely honest with you, is this would be, and obviously here's the way I look at Charles Jagasaw. If he plays again, that's awesome. I'm happy. I hope he plays again. But I'm just at the point now where we've heard enough about the injury, and we've heard enough about the rehab and all those other type of things for me to just say, look, I'm not holding my breath on it. If he plays, he plays. That's kind of where I'm at. And I'm crossing my fingers and wishing upon a star that he plays, because he's a super talented guy, but I don't think you can bank on him being there next year, because as we've mentioned, the next regular season game he starts in will be the first regular season game he starts in. But I think the other thing is, this is a far more athletic offensive line than what we've seen in recent seasons. I think this is I think the physical gifts of this group would be a lot more impressive. But I think the athleticism stands out on the left side, especially. Then you'd have this really big right side where Sullivan Absher at 6'7", 325 pounds is not your biggest guy on that side of the line of scrimmage. You know what I mean? Just even if you just look at the spring weights where guys are going to be down, this offensive line would be 316, 304, 308, 325, and 322. Right now, Absher's bigger than Jagasaw. Jagasaw will be back up over 330 when we get to fall camp. Absher's been like right around 320 to 325 his whole tenure. This is as big as he's going to get. But that's an offensive line, Trev, that averages 315 pounds compared to an offensive line last year where, Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner were 300 pounds. Right. You know what I mean? Like in full pads. Like, how did Emil Wagner weigh in? Oh, he was full pad. He was full padded up. So, like that's just kind of how I look at it, Trev. Same with Emil. You just got way bigger and you didn't lose any kind of athleticism. So you're starting to see the talent that Joe Rudolph has recruited to Notre Dame, hopefully, start to ascend. And that's what kind of gets me a little excited about what this could look like.
Oh, the unit will be exceptionally talented. Agree with you there. The other thing that this shows me, too, about the offensive line room is it showcases the depth. If Sullivan Absher doesn't have to consistently cross-train to be essentially the utility knife of the offensive line unit for depth purposes, that tells me a lot. They retained every single offensive line that had the ability to come back, with the exception of like Billy Schrouth and Emil Wagner left to go to the NFL draft. But they had no portal losses on the offensive line, and they brought in 6 guys. They didn't have to go to the transfer portal to supplement their losses. You now have, what's the number up to, including the incoming guys, like 22? 20 offensive linemen. So you have enough to create a 4 deep across the board. And so the other thing that this tells me is this is also an extremely deep unit. Because if they're willing to try out Will Black at left tackle and kick in Anthony Knapp at guard, to your point, worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, they can either flip-flop the two, or you have an ongoing competition throughout the offseason at the left guard spot between, one of Will Black or, Christopher Terrick, or, we'll see. If Jags comes back healthy, we'll see what that looks like as well. But I think that this also showcases the depth, and they're going to need it. I'm never one to sit back and predict injuries, nor do I like doing it, but it's also a part of the game. And so far, Notre Dame has had significant injuries in the offensive line, whether it be in the offseason or in the first half of the regular season, or like we saw in 2024 in the playoffs, where their starting left tackle for 15 games wasn't able to play in the national championship game. So injuries will happen in this unit. This also showcases the depth of the room. To make a guy like Sullivan Absher have the ability to stay in one spot and train up for the duration of the offseason. You and I were talking about that on the phone last night. What does it look like for a kid like that to, in one spring, go from taking reps at right tackle to left guard to right guard to center in the span of 15 practices, give or take? I think that's really exciting. So very excited to see what that turns out to be, and they're going to need it. Well, we've talked about it on this show quite a bit. CJ Carr is a favorite to win the Heisman on FanDuel. In order for that to come to fruition, he's going to need the big boys up front to be able to give him time to go and put on that performance. Yep. It's going to be awesome.
I think there's when I look at the potential of the offensive line, and we'll have an O-line breakdown here soon, so we won't dive into this too much, but this unit is going to be so incredibly important about just how good this team can be. This offensive line is going to be important to that. I was on an interview yesterday, and the point I made is, and I've said this to other people before in interviews, is the biggest difference is last year, the biggest difference for CJ Carr is last year he was the complementary weapon to Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I've also said that those guys overcame some things from the offensive line. Their success wasn't always because of how good the line was. At times it was. I mean, against Syracuse it was to a degree. But a lot of the success they had, a good chunk of the success they had was not in spite of the offensive line, but it was the offensive line just kind of doing an okay job, and they're freaks and just doing things that a lot of other people can't do. And so if you're now a team that you're going to be driven by the success of your quarterback, it puts even more emphasis on your offensive line, because CJ won't be able to overcome the offensive line the way the running backs did because of the nature of his game and the position he plays. If you have a Lamar Jackson type, sure, you can overcome it. But even in big games, go watch the bowl game that Lamar played against LSU in 2016. It didn't matter how good he was. He was getting swallowed up by that LSU defense. You can maybe make one guy miss, you can make one guy miss, maybe two. You're not making 3 or 4 miss, not when you're playing good teams. And so while CJ is going to get a lot of the hype and the love, justified, we're going to talk about the talented receivers, the tight ends, the running backs, and all that. At the end of the day, this offensive line is going to be the key. And getting the most out of this offensive line. And a big part of that is going to be making sure the right 5 are on the field at the same time. That's going to be the absolute key to this thing, getting your most talented line on the field. And I'll be completely honest with you, the last 2 years, I don't think they put their most talented offensive line on the field. And I'm not even talking about because of Jagasol's injuries. I'm talking about even without him being injured. I don't think we always saw the most talented offensive line. Heck, we started to see in 2015 or 2024, Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler weren't even starters. So I think that's been an issue. This shows me if that's what the line looks like, not counting Jagasol, that is your most talented offensive line day one of the 2026 season. Maybe over the course of a season, something changes, but I just think you're putting Knapp in a position where he can maximize his talent. You're putting Absher in a position where he can maximize his talent, because I love the idea of the two big boys next to each other. You're putting Gerby. Gerby was very good at guard last year. I've said this before. The best looking snap we saw all season at left tackle was the one snap Gerby Lambert took against Purdue. You're like, dude, that's what a left tackle is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think he'll make that transition easily. And then, of course, as we've said a million times, I think Anthony Knapp is a good left tackle. I think he can be an elite interior offensive lineman. So that's part of my excitement. And I don't know, how Anthony Knapp feels about it, but I hope he embraces it because, like left tackle comes with having some prestige, right? Let's be honest. You play left tackle, it's kind of like you play quarterback. Like you're a left tackle. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. You're the blindside guy. That's awesome. And I get that. But I think he could be really, really, really good inside. And if you saw the mid-zone breakdown I did, it's about a 50-minute long video. Once you get past the Miami A&M games and you watch his feet and drive in games later in the year, I mean, that dude moves people. Go back and watch the 98-yard touchdown run against Indiana in the playoffs in 2024 and watch him destroy Mikael Kamara where it was immediate contact. He comes off the line, boom, hit, and he drives him off the line. He's a mover in the run game. When he's able to have immediate contact, he wins the leverage battle. He wins the athleticism battle, but he's a lot stronger than people realize. They see 6'4", 300-pound kid, and they're thinking, well, he's probably a technician. He's probably a lot like, Robert Hainsey and Zach Martin. And this kid's a bully. And that's one of the reasons and he just isn't comfortable in space. I think playing in tighter quarters is going to be something that very much benefits Anthony Knapp. So you're taking one of your more experienced players, or actually your most experienced player. And that's crazy to say. The most experienced player coming back up front for Notre Dame next year is Anthony Knapp, who's now started 26 games. True junior.
Yeah. And I mean,
by a lot.
Yeah, I was about to say, because your close second is Gerby Lambert because he started all 12. I mean, Ashton Craig started what?
They're tied. They're tied. He started 3 in 23, 3 in 24, and then 6 last year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So he's tied with Gerby for the most starts. Anthony Knapp's got 26 starts. That's a lot of starts. So, but it's not a lot of total starts from the offensive line. I mean, that's 26 from Knapp, 20. It's 24 from the other two. That's 50. And then you got what? 5 starts from Sully?
Yep.
Or no, 4 starts from Sully, 5 from Joe Otting. So you're talking about 60 career starts. That's not a ton, but it's also not a light amount where you're concerned about it. But there's only one guy that's coming back in the position he started before, ever. And that's Knapp. So you want to get them as much early work as possible. So I'm excited about it if this is the direction they go. Like I'm like, dude, it's just a photo or it's just a video. It doesn't mean anything. Who knows? But then you're just like, dude, if that's the O-line, man, this offensive line is going to be really talented and really good and athletic. And you're going to have natural tackles. You're going to have tackles that can like actually anchor and, take on bull rushes. Imagine that, like you're going to have tackles that can move the edge. You start getting fired up about it, man. You really, because in the games where you saw Will Black playing right tackle, I thought he looked really good. And I was surprised at how well he moved people in the run game at guard.
Yeah.
Because he played guard against Syracuse, and I thought he was moving people off the line. And then I thought in the snaps he took a right tackle against Navy, I thought he looked very comfortable and natural in those situations. So I'm excited to see what he can do this offseason. He's going to need all the work he can get, because he's never played a meaningful down, but the talent is enormous. And now you're going to have 2 5-star offensive tackles starting for you this year. I'm talking about migrating 5-star offensive tackles. That's exciting to think about.
It's a good spot to be in.
Yeah.
Very good spot to be in. I agree. Folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to dive into part 3 where we're going to be talking about defensive breakout predictions. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 3 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're going to be talking about defensive breakouts. And this is something that we're going to continue to do throughout the offseason. We're going to talk about, obviously, the offense, and we're going to keep going down the line here. But quick preface before we kind of dive into who these breakouts are. kind of wanted to talk about what the definition of a breakout is, because we've talked on multiple times on the show that there's different levels to breakouts. And, first level, it's kind of, you're going from not playing a whole lot to now you're a key part of the rotation. Second level of a breakout, you go from like a key rotational piece to, hey, now you're in the starting lineup. You're trotting out there with the first 11 to take the field.
Yeah, or you're in a rotation where you're making more of an impact at a
Right.
position where it's more of a natural rotation where, you could still be the number 2 D tackle, but like you're the guy that's making all the plays, or you're producing at a much higher level. Yeah.
Right. And then finally, the last breakout's kind of going from, you're a starter, you had a solid first year of a breakout, and then the next year you kind of elevate your game, and now you take it to stardom. You're a stud, a bona fide dude in the lineup. So those are kind of the 3 breakouts that we're talking about here, just to give you guys a window in, because there's going to be some names that you guys are here. It's like, what, that guy he's already broken out. Like, what more? So different levels.
Yeah. And that's what makes it fun to have a conversation. I'll say it's this. I think last year was difficult. This year's even more difficult to pick breakouts for 2 reasons. And it really kind of goes in 2 different directions, Trev. One is it's difficult because there's so many potential players that could break out. The other reason it's difficult is because they're so talented in the starting lineup that I want to predict a breakout from a really talented younger player, but I'm like, but I don't know how he's going to get on the field. So it does make it a challenge. And like, there's a couple young DBs that I'm like, dude, I want to have him as one of my top guys, but it's just like, I don't know how much he's going to play compared to last year either. So that adds to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of snake this a little bit like we normally do. Trevor and I are going to go down our list, and we're going to give our breakout players. We're going to connect 1 and 1. So he's going to give one. I'm going to give one. He's going to give one. We talked about it before the show. There's a couple guys that we had both on our list, but we're going to just each give a different one. So I'll have 4, he'll have 4. And then we'll just rapid fire some guys at the end that we think are candidates for it, because it was impossible just to top at 4 because there's just so many options for breakout players. And this is just offense and this is just defense. This isn't offense. We'll do offense next week. We'll do, this isn't special teams. And then depending on how long this segment goes, I may give Trev a chance to kind of speak to some breakouts in the transfer portal that because he didn't get a chance to talk about that last week when I had the conversation. But Trev, let's dive into it. Again, this is on defense. This is going to be any one of the levels. We'll give you the name and we'll give you the level, the type of breakout that we're predicting those players to have. So Trev, I'll let you kick it off with a kind of a theme for us when we talk about these breakouts.
Definitely a common theme as you guys see this going along. But the first one on my defensive breakout list is Boubacar Traore. And again, this is why we're talking about the multiple levels of a breakout. Obviously, last year, first year back, removed from that knee injury. And now we're going to, I think, see him blossom into that stud that we know he can be. Boubacar flashed all throughout the season, but he ended the year with 6.5 sacks, played in 11 games. Obviously, he sat out the Navy game. Some of it kind of worn down. The other part of it is like he's an elite pass rusher going against a triple option team. I think some of it was kind of viewing what he was going to do later on in the postseason if they had that opportunity. But I think this is the year that Boubacar becomes now a national household name as far as edge rushers go. And they're going to start talking about him like they talk about, the Colin Simmons of the world, how they start talking about the Dylan Stewarts of the world. I think Boubacar is going to break out. And I think that he's going to have an absolutely massive season this year for Notre Dame and kind of anchor that Notre Dame pass rush. When you hear Notre Dame has an elite pass rush, number 5 is going to be the first person that they mention following that up. So he's my number 1 breakout player, Brian.
I love that one, Trev. And I do think there's another level for Boubacar to get to. And that's one of the things this team, we talked about going back to segment 1, winning a championship. It's going to be about guys like him who were already pretty good, taking things to another level. A guy similar, I'm saying the same position, a guy that I think takes another jump too is Bryce Young. Bryce kind of was a starter last year, but not really. I mean, they were in a rotation. Burnham ended up starting a bunch at the end of the year. And Bryce had a very intriguing year because I think in a lot of ways, I've not even a lot of ways, I've seen it in conversations just on our chat on the board. There's a lot of people that view Bryce is having a disappointing season last year. I don't think that's true, Trev. You and I talked about this before the season. We're like, look, we need to pump the brakes on this whole Bryce is going to be a star player in year 2 kind of thing. This is the year he goes and he's more impactful and he plays more and all that. But even then, Bryce, I thought early on in the season he struggled early in the season. He just did. And I think there are some people that made some impressions of how he played based on some of the struggles. And the big struggles he has are still learning proper technique and being assignment correct. If you go back and watch the A&M game, he had 2 big mistakes in the run game, one of which cost him a long third down run. But he also had 4 pressures in that game and had some unblockable moments. And so when I look at Bryce and I see a guy last year that, that I think he had 1.5 sacks, 1 sack last year.
Yeah.
Not a lot. I mean, that's not a lot of production last season from a kid with his talent. 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks officially, 3 pass breakups. But I also see a guy, Trev, that was number 2 on the defense in pressures at 29. He had 11 hits plus sacks in the quarterback. He just didn't get to the quarterback for sacks a lot, but he hit the quarterback a lot. He was only 2 pressures behind Boubacar, and he was only 5 hits plus sacks behind Boubacar. But he had 92 fewer pass rush snaps than Boubacar. I've pointed this out before. I'll just do it again. But if you take Bryce's production last year and give him the same number of snaps that Boubacar had, he has 42 pressures compared to 31 for Boubacar. If you look the same thing at his hits plus sacks in the quarterback and you give him the same number of snaps as Boubacar, assuming he projects at the same level, he's got the same exact number of hits plus sacks in the quarterback as Boubacar. So there was a lot of good there, but consistency wasn't there. So when I think of Bryce this year, I see him going from a guy with 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, good rotation player, to being I think his season's going to look a lot like what Boubacar's did in 2025. 9-10 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, just an overall more productive player that you look at and say, but wait till you see what he can do in 2027, which is exactly what you're saying, Trev, because I believe when we had this conversation a year ago, we predicted Boubacar to break out, and he did pretty much almost exactly what we thought he was going to do production-wise. Now there's another level for Boubacar to put up like Isaiah Foskey, Stephon Tuitt, Justin Tuck type of numbers. What's going to help both of them is that they're together. But I could see Bryce Young having the kind of jump out or breakout and the kind of production jump that's very similar to what Boubacar did from 24 to 25. And so that's why Bryce is my top pick. And part of the reason why is because he will have Boubacar on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to, I think, I agree with you, is going to have that All-American caliber breakout that, people are going to be talking about him as a potential first-round draft pick next year. That's going to make it a little bit easier for Bryce to get in some real favorable protection scheme situations where teams are going to be like, dude, we got to worry about number 5. We're just going to have to trust our tackles to block 95. And I don't know how well that's going to go.
No, I get it. You and I share a lot of the same sentiment about Bryce Young. My second breakout on defense, kind of along the same lines here, but I'm going with the Don Shuler. I think that there's another level that he can get to as well. And you guys are going to kind of have to stick with me here while I kind of go through this analogy. But I view a Don Shuler making the Xavier Watts jump from 23 to 24. Whereas, yes, in 23, he won the Bronco Nagurski Award. He was a unanimous All-American, 6-7 interceptions, something crazy. Talk about Xavier Watts. But we talked about after the fact that he was a much better all-around football player in 2024. Whenever you needed that play, 0 was there. Whenever you needed that stop, 0 was there. I think back to that play in the Sugar Bowl where Georgia ran like an end around and everybody was flowing right. Every single defender on that team was flowing right except for one guy, and it was Xavier Watts who came and blew up the play, and it was either no gain or a gain of a yard. Helped get Notre Dame's defense off the field. That's the level of impact that I see a Don Shuler having this upcoming season. He's a returning captain, so the leadership aspect is going to be there for him as well. But similar to Boubacar, I think Adon is going to start building up his reputation of being more of a household name, because I believe that Notre Dame is going to have the best starting safety tandem in the country. In order to do that, you need both. And I know we're getting ready to talk here about the other safety here in a little bit, but I think Adon Schuler, there's another level that he can get to. Not to say that he's played poorly, but I think we're going to see him more as an all-around type of football player this year. He's going into year 2 now of kind of being that guy on the back end. And I thought he played very, very well in year 1 of being that guy a year removed from losing Xavier Watts. So I think he goes and becomes that star on the back end of the defense this year. So he's my second guy.
He's a guy that I think a lot of people have taken for granted. And just because, oh, well, he's just been around a while and you just kind of like, oh yeah, Don Schuler. But hey, let's really talk about the hot up and comer. And we kind of both had a Don there, and I love your prediction of him. But I'm also there's a theme a little bit for me in the offensive and defensive breakouts where part of some of these breakouts are because you don't have just one guy at the position. So you went Boubacar, I'm going Bryce. You went Adon, I'm going Tay Johnson. And, what we saw from Tay last year was really impressive when you consider last year, number one, last year he was number 2 on the team in interceptions. He had 4, and he really only played 9 games because he only played, I think it's 9 snaps. Let me look this up real quick. I think he only played 9 snaps against Miami. 9 snaps against Miami. And then, of course, he misses the last 2 games of the year and still has the production that he had last season, which was very good production. And now that was his first year playing meaningful downs. I mean, as a true freshman, he only played 39 snaps all season, and they were at corner. He didn't even get a chance to play safety. They were at corner. He really only plays 9 games, and he still finishes 3rd on the team in tackles. He's only 5 less tackles than Adon. He had 5 more solo tackles than Adon, which the nature of the position he plays compared to Adon is going to lead to that, a little bit more of that, the way that he's used. So that's not surprising. But when you look at his ability to make impacts, plays in the ball, Trev, he had 4 interceptions, 3 breakups. I've said this before. I'll say it again. If Drake Bowen doesn't bat down a Mason Heinschel pass in the end zone, Tay's got a second pick 6 in that game. I'm just saying that right now. Drake didn't do anything wrong. Drake's got to go make the play in front of him. He's the first line of defense. You know what I mean? It's almost kind of like, man, I wish Drake wouldn't have got his hand up and done what he was supposed to do on that play.
and you see it on film. Tay Johnson knew he had another house call. But yeah, he knew. Yeah, he did.
Yes. It was great. But he just he's around the ball a lot. And like some of those picks, it's the ball being overthrown and he's right there. Yeah, exactly. That's how it was for Adon in 2024. That's your job. You're not the guy guarding that guy. You're the high defender, and if the ball sails and you're in the right spot, you will make those plays. And I think Tay's going to go into this season with a lot more attention. He was a freshman All-American, and if he's the player that I think he can be, I think he's going to have a national breakout. So my level of a breakout for Tay is a lot like yours for Adon, where I think it's that highest level breakout where it's like postseason All-American type of honors. The big thing for Tay, he's got to stay healthy. He had injuries in high school. He obviously got injured last year. They need him to stay healthy because he has got legit big-time playmaker talent just like Adon does. And that's the thing is I think this safety room has a chance to be the best safety duo that Notre Dame has had since probably Glenn Earl and Jerome Sapp back in 2002. And I'm not forgetting about the one we had last year or the one in 2024 or the one with anyone with Kyle Hamilton and whoever played next to him, the Jalen Elliott, Alohi Gilman duos. I'm not forgetting about any of those groups. The difference for me is unlike 24, where you had 2 outstanding players, Adon, and then arguably the greatest safety that Notre Dame's had of my generation as far as a college player. But Adon was still a first-year starter that year. The difference now is you've got Adon's a third-year starter and Tay's a second-year starter. So you have so much more experience in the system now. And I think that's going to be something that could really help this duo be impactful. And there's a chance, based on our first breakout, that the ball is going to be getting thrown a little bit more recklessly this season from quarterbacks than it has been in recent seasons. And that's what has me there too. I think this safety tandem is going to be special.
Agreed.
And we're going to see fans jump into Team Adon and Team Tay and all that stuff. That's just kind of what we do as fans, right? but them as a duo is what is going to make this defense elite. They're both outstanding football players.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And that was some of my hesitation. It was tough. You and I were prepping before the show, figuring out how to word the Adon Schuler breakout, because a lot of the attention, and I understand why, was going to go to Tay Johnson. But you need them both. If Notre Dame is going to be the defense we believe them to be this year, you need both 8 and 9 on the back end. I say 8 and 9 loosely. With how much players change their numbers nowadays, it could change. But I'm assuming they're going to stick with 8 and 9.
Well, they did so far. When they announced the new numbers for the spring, which I was happy to see. Although, Tay, my man, I'm going to ask you a favor here. Can you please stop tucking your jersey into your shoulder pads? Because it's really hard from the press box sometimes to see the difference in you and Adon. I literally, during pregame, by the end of the year, would start looking to see what gear Tay was wearing compared to what gear Adon was wearing, so I could maybe try to tell them apart. Because up on the press box, it's like, they don't look a whole lot different. You know what I mean? And then, Tay's got that tucked underneath, and it's like, because even Joe Tessitore made that mistake in the pick game. He's like, Adon Schuler with the pick 6. He's like, and he quickly checked it. But then Adon went and got his own in that game too with the pick 2. You know what I mean? So Tay got a pick 6, Adon got a pick 2 in that game, which was pretty awesome. But they're a special duo. Who's your third, Trev?
Third guy for me is actually, I think, the oldest person on the defensive side of the ball, or at least one of, and I'm going with Jason Onye. Up to this point in his career, obviously it's been a tumultuous road to get to this point. But with Jason Onye, you've been granted this 6 year of eligibility. Now, what are you going to go out and do with this opportunity? Up to this point, when he's been on the field, he has been a good football player for Notre Dame. But can you have that consistent week in and week out impact that we've seen from previous defensive tackles that have came through Notre Dame? Because up to this point, his career has kind of been, and I'm talking strictly on the field, kind of like a Jerry Tillery type of career. It's like some weeks it's like, yo, dude, like if you can do that every week,
yeah,
I mean, this is going to be nuts. And then there's other weeks where it's like, I know he played. Yeah. I just don't know how many snaps. And I'm embellishing a little bit here, but that's
you're really not. There's games where I'm like, did Onye get hurt?
Yeah.
Like, no, he played 30 snaps. You're like, didn't notice him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, you're on.
And so that's the opportunity that's in front of Jason Onye. You've been granted this 6 year of eligibility. You are now the leader and one of the leaders of the entire defensive line room and one of the leaders of the interior. What are you going to do with this final opportunity? I think this is the year that we see Jason Onye make that jump from, hey, that's a good guy, to, yo, that's a dude. This is a dude. And we could start talking about him in the likes of not just, yo, how do you run on and how do you throw against Boubacar and Bryce? But now you have 6'5" long arm Jason Onye batting down passes in the middle. How do you move the ball on this Notre Dame defense? They have the best secondary in the country. They have the most talented and deepest linebacker room in the country. Now you're telling me that there's just a 6'5" to 6'7" stone wall in front of them. Offense is trying to run and throw on this.
Yeah.
I think Jason Onye is going to have to play a role along that interior. And he's my third breakout player. Love the opportunity in front of him.
So, Trev, you talked about just the light going. We've talked before. You talked there about the light going on a little bit for Jason Onye late in the year. And I think part of it was he had some rust to shake off.
Sure.
You guys know I have a love-hate relationship with Pro Football Focus, but I did want to show this because I think this gives a bit of a look into what I'm talking about here. This is Jason's grades last year from PFF and his pressure numbers and stop rate production. The more yellow it is, the worse. The more green it is, the better. And then when you get to blue, that's elite. If you started getting into like dark green or a pretty good color green, you had a pretty good grade. If you look at this from USC on, and this includes 3 ranked opponents, USC, Navy, and Pitt. Look at his production. Look at his grades in the second half of the year. Very different. It's like the light definitely went on for Jason Onye. You look at his pressure numbers. In the first 6 games of the year, he has 2 pressures. In the last 6 games, 17 or 15 pressures. I think 5, 10, 30, 15 pressures. In the first 6 games, 4 run stops. In the last 6 games, 9 run stops. You start having him do that over just the course of an entire season. Now he's starting to get into Riley Mills territory when it comes to his pressure numbers, Trev. I mean, Riley Mills last year, who was phenomenal for Notre Dame, had 34 pressures in 13 games. And that's Jason Onye kind of getting into that Riley Mills type of territory with how he performed last year. So I just think if he can show that level of consistency, Trev, from a week-to-week standpoint and understand the blessing that was given to you to have, number one, for the team to bring you back, for the coaches to bring you back, for them to embrace you the way they did, but then also to be given a year where the NCAA granted you a sixth year in a year where they're trying to limit how many of those they grant. You were given a blessing, young man. Take advantage. And if he does, Trev, I think a breakout is definitely coming. I love that one. I'm going to go with my next one, Trev, and it's going to be Drake Bowen. It's hard to think about Drake Bowen being a breakout player because he's a 2-year starter. He's been a very good player. For me, when I look at Drake, I think, I've said this before, I could be wrong. I have a feeling that Chris Ash's defense in 26 is going to be a little bit more geared towards trying to get more production from the linebackers, more big play production from the linebackers, more tackle numbers, more tackle for loss numbers. And when I look at Drake Bowen, I've seen a guy that has been flown under the radar the last couple of years, and just to me he doesn't forget getting the love nationally. He doesn't get the love from the fan base, his own fan base, for how good I think he's been the last couple of years. And I think this year is kind of the year where that starts to change a little bit. I think Drake has been a good football player, a pretty good football player the last couple of years. I think this year he becomes a big-time football player. Not only just for Notre Dame production-wise, but I think nationally. I think he starts to get a lot more attention as well. I think that the tackle for loss numbers are going to be improved. I think the pressure numbers are going to continue to improve. I think the tackle numbers are going to improve as well. And just overall, I think Drake's poised to take that next jump as a football player. He got better in coverage last year. He got a lot better at looking up zones and finding zones and making plays and taking over routes. He, was a more effective blitzer last year than he was the year before. Certainly more impactful getting after the quarterback, I thought, last year. So I just think overall his game continues to grow, and I think he's going to go into this next offseason, and we're going to be talking about him as potentially an All-American caliber football player. That's where I'm seeing from Drake Bowen.
I love that pick. Definitely one of the more underrated starters on this list. I mean, Drake Bowen is probably one of very few third-year returning starting middle linebackers that just don't get mentioned by any major outlet. I mean, if Alabama or if Texas or Ohio State had a third-year returning middle linebacker, it'd be plastered all over everything. I agree with you completely.
Well, what's interesting, Trev, is the only places I've ever seen Drake Bowen get mentioned nationally is there was an article ESPN did last year where they interviewed coaches, and it was let me see if it's the 25 most impactful non-quarterbacks for 2025. I'd see if I can find this article. It was something from ESPN. And they did this story, and it was most important. Let me go find it. But it was a really interesting feature. But they basically they talked to coaches around the country about different players and who are the most impactful players, best players, something along those lines. And I remember reading that and just going through and saying, okay, who are they going to have? Who are they going to talk about? And then they talked about Drake Bowen was on that list. And I was like, wow, why? That's interesting. Like, didn't see that coming. And I was like, hey, man, like people just, I don't think people understand how good this kid is. And, so I think, I think he's a big reason why I'm looking at it now. Yeah, I found that article, and they talked about, I think a lot of people are surprised at his athleticism. And then the other one was when Bruce Feldman had his breakdown of coaches talking about who was better, Notre Dame or Miami. And this is something that a coach said. A coach said Notre Dame's linebackers were the best we played. We wanted to attack Drake Bowen, but we realized he can cover tailbacks. All of their backers are really good. Like, this is a team that on film was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go after this guy. But then you play him and you're like, boy, this guy's a whole lot better, than we thought. So Jaden Osbury and Jalen Seed and Drake Bowen all have speed and physicality. Like, whenever you see something that's built around what do coaches say about Drake Bowen, that's when you see him treated like an impact player. And I think this year he has the production to match. That's why he's on my list.
I love it. My final breakout character, I guess not final, because we're going to talk about some others to keep your eye on, but I'm going with a little bit different theme from some of the other players that I've talked about, and I'm going with Christopher Burgess, sticking along the defensive line, kind of mentioning that common theme that Brian and I have stuck with some of these defensive breakouts. Not only is Christopher Burgess put on the weight to break out, I mean, the dude's 299, came to campus as like a 265, 270-pound kid. So not only is he put on the weight since he's gotten to South Bend, I think that he has the skill set to really contribute this year and be a part of that key rotation in Notre Dame's interior of the defensive line. Now, obviously, you have Jason Onye back. They got Francis Brew. They have Tion Gray. But I think behind that, there's a little bit of uncertainty of like, okay, who can step up? And not going to get the cart too far in front of the horse here because I know we're getting ready, I think, tomorrow to talk about the interior of the defensive line. So all I'll say is this with Christopher Burgess. He now has the size and he's always had the physical tools to now break out as a interior defensive lineman. Now it's going to be up to Charlie Partridge to groom him and get him up to speed to where he can now make an impact. But look, it would not surprise me at all if at some point in the 2026 season, we start talking about Christopher Burgess regularly on this show. I don't know if he's going to do something to where he cracks the starting lineup, but I have a feeling that we're going to be seeing quite a bit of him this upcoming fall. That's why I have him as my final breakout player on Notre Dame's defense this year, Brian.
I had him on there too, Trev. Let you have that one. We were kind of going through it. You said him first, and I was like, I should have said it. But no, I agree with you. My fourth one is it's really my cop-out answer. And it's only a cop-out because I just don't know who it's going to be, but I know what position it's going to be. Somebody at defensive end, not named Boubacar, Bryce Young, or Keon Keeley. Now, Keon could have a breakout, but I'm looking in a different direction. Behind those three, you have a bunch of guys who've not really played much football. And the guy that has played a decent amount of football is 207 pounds at defensive end. I don't know who the fourth D end is going to be, who the fifth D end is going to be, but whoever steps in as the number 4 defensive end, whether it's Logan Thomas, Cole Mullins, Dom Hulak, Joe Reif, Rodney Dunham, or Ebenezer Utade, whoever steps into that role and can give you Junior Tuihalamaka type of minutes in production, snaps in production, is a breakout player because none of them have played. And they're going to need that. And I don't know who it's going to be of that group, but somebody from that group is going to step up and be like, okay. And maybe it's a Cole Mullins moves outside. Maybe he drops a little bit of weight and moves outside. But somebody from that group, Trev, is going to come and have a breakout season where like Junior, and I'm envisioning like Junior had in 2024, where maybe the numbers don't blow you away. You look at Junior's 24 season. Let me just pull it up here real quick. I had the stats up. Let me just pull up. But you remember, this is a kid that didn't play, Trev, the first 2 games of the year, did not play a single snap of football. And at the end of the year, in 24, he had 33 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Those aren't numbers that you're like, dude, future first-round draft pick. But you look at it and say, if that kid doesn't step up the way he did, I don't know if this team could have made the run that they made.
100%.
And somebody's going to step up like Junior did last year, or like Junior did really the last 2 years, where he didn't get the love of the Boubacars and the Bryce Youngs and the Josh Burnhams and guys like that. But the kid just showed up every day, did his job hard, didn't complain, didn't go cry in the locker room when he wasn't playing the first 2 games. He kept his head down. He kept working. And when his number was called, he said, I got you. And he went out and stepped up and made a pick. The first game he played, he makes a pick. And I thought that was just so – it just said a lot about him as a young man and as a player. but also it's guys like that are so important to your football team, especially in a 16-game season. And, he had 2 huge plays against Georgia, had a big sack against Georgia, and then, of course, recovers the fumble in the second quarter. I was actually watching those highlights today. Guys like that are crucial. I don't know who's going to step into that role this year, but somebody will. I predict that somebody will, and that person's going to be one of my unsung hero type of breakout players. That's
I love it. I love it, man. I mean, look, Junior didn't play the first 2 games on defense in 2024 and led the entire defensive end room in total pressures at the end of the season. Second on the team.
Yep.
Love that. Love that pick, man. Just whoever steps up and fills that void. There are a couple of players that we do just want to mention to also keep your eye on for a breakout. Didn't crack necessarily the top 4 list, but again, wouldn't surprise us if they broke out. First one on that list for me, and I had a hard time kind of figuring out where to put him, which is ultimately why I left him off, but it was Dallas Golden. Mm-hmm. I think in some capacity he's going to break out this year. I just don't know what that's going to look like. Yeah. Under Mike Mickens, it was, the thought definitely danced around of moving Christian Gray inside and him playing a little bit more nickel, but now I don't know what Aaron Henry wants to do. Odds are it could be the same because obviously this is going to have to be ran by Chris Ash, but we just don't know until we get out there and we see it. And ultimately, we're not going to know until September 6th when we see it against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But no,
sorry.
You're good.
I thought you're done. That's my bad. I misread the transition.
No worries. But to some degree, Dallas Golden is going to continue to help this defense. His breakout is going to look more like his impact is just going to be greater, but he could have the same role, if that makes sense. He could still be a rotational player, but his presence is going to be felt a little bit more on the field this year in comparison to when he was a true freshman. So I have Dallas Golden in my definitely keep.
And if somebody goes down, he's ready to step in, or doesn't play well, he's ready to step in anywhere. I agree with you completely. He's too good not to be on the field and helping you out. Mine is Madden Faremo. Depth is so important. You're like, dude, hold on a second. Didn't you have the starter at Mike as your breakout? Yes. But Madden Faremo to me is going to be a great rotation player for Notre Dame. And I just think it's my fear with Drake Bowen this year is that Drake is going to be really good and fans are still not going to give him the respect that he deserves because they're going to just talk about how good Madden looked in his opportunities. And then and we're going to sit there saying, like, look, Drake was a stud. He's going to be a day 2 draft pick, but they're going to still be okay at middle linebacker. And, part of the reason why is because Drake is doing with Madden exactly what J.D. Bertrand did with Drake, which is I got to go do my thing, but it's also my job as a captain in the middle linebacker to make sure that my replacement, when it's his time, is ready to roll. And I think Madden is going to benefit from that if he continues to just watch what 34 is doing. But he's going to play earlier in the season, I think, because I'll be surprised if Kingston is like full go in the first month of the season. And so I think he'll play. I think he's going to be a great special teams player. They're going to play in a lot of blowouts where he's going to get a chance to make some plays. But I think in real game situations, you're going to want to spell Drake, and I think Madden's going to step in and perform very well. And if his number's ever called for a bigger role because of injury somewhere, because he can play Mike and Will. He's not just a Mike. There may be some snaps next year where maybe we see him and Drake together on the field. I think Madden's going to have a big-time breakout. We're going to be really like, okay, man, Drake was awesome. But it's kind of like when we went from Audric Estime to Love and Price, and we're like, dude, listen, I remember the show we did. So I don't want to take any. Audric was great. He was this, and I don't want to make any kind of disparaging remarks about Audric, but they're going to be fine. And that's kind of how I'm going to feel about Drake. All-American season. They win a national championship. He's a day 2 draft pick, but they're going to be okay. That's when you've arrived in as a program. When, it's going to be the same thing at like corner, I think, next year. Like, man, Leonard Moore might be the best cornerback Notre Dame's ever had. They won't have a Leonard Moore next year, but they're going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, that's where you want to be as a program. It's a really healthy place to be. And I think that's where they're going to be. And we're going to start to see some of that from Madden this season.
I agree. I love that pick, man. I love it. My next one to keep an eye on, I'm sticking in the secondary, and I'm going to go with Ethan Long. Notre Dame played 4 safeties last year. Obviously, they played Adon Schuler. They played Tay Johnson. They played Luke Talich. All 3 of those guys come back. Who kind of steps up, though, into that Jalen Stroman-esque type of role? I think that's going to be Ethan Long. I think that he showed them something during his opportunities against Syracuse in that blowout. Had a pick six that got called back, and then just to kind of put a little bit of icing on the cake, he went and got another interception. I think that he is in prime position to step up into that role and becomes a key part of that rotation. He's long, he's athletic. He is somewhere in between 6'2" and 6'3", according to Notre Dame. I know his height changed once the new winter roster came out.
A lot of guys like this.
Yeah, so he's somewhere in that range, but he fits that long, athletic, rangy mold that Tay Johnson and Luke Talich also do. Jalen Stroman and Luke Talich, although we spent a lot of time talking about Adon Schuler and Tay Johnson, rightfully so, Jalen Stroman and Luke Talich had some of the more impactful performances of the 2025 defense. They're going to need somebody else to step up and kind of fill that role. I think we're going to see a lot of Ethan Long this upcoming season, so he's my next guy to keep an eye on.
I think we could have gone with Luke Talich there as well.
Yeah.
But I think like Luke already established himself as like that really important rotation piece. I'm going to stay in the secondary trip. I'm going Christian Gray. And I'll be real brief here. He's got to stay healthy. If he does, then it's where are they going to play him? Nickel or outside? My prediction is more so the assumption they're going to move him into nickel. And I think he's going to be lights out inside if they make that move. I think Christian could have a breakout no matter what if he can just stay healthy. But I think as a nickel, with what I think Chris Ash wants to do with the field corner, I think Christian fits that nickel very well. And I think if you put him back in that slot and let him be more aggressive, let him be more physical, let him, kind of punch and run a little bit as opposed to playing. Christian struggles in off-ball cover. I mean, we've been saying this since 2024. He struggles in off-ball coverage. Well, you don't play a whole lot of off-ball coverage at corner, and he's really good at, keeping things in front of him. He struggles. Let me rephrase. He struggles in off-ball coverage when he has to flip his hips in transition. Not that he can't, but he just loses receivers in transitions. I don't know what it is. In off-ball transitions, he loses guys. But he's always been really good at like driving on routes and things like that. And as a nickel, you're going to be doing a lot of flat coverage, a lot of jumping and undercutting routes, a lot of aggressiveness, a lot of, covering slots, things like that. And when you got to chase and run, but you also have help over top of you, which allows you to be even more aggressive. And so I think he's going to really shine in that role.
Love it. My last one, I'm going back to the linebacking core, Brian, and I'm going with Jaden Ausberry.
My man.
And again, I'm keeping it short and sweet, but look, I think Jaden Ausberry kind of suffers a little bit from middle child syndrome. A lot of people are talking about Kingston. A lot of people are talking about Madden Faramo. I've heard some people talk about Thomas Davis Jr. and what kind of role he can have. Obviously, a lot of attention to Drake Bowen. Again, rightfully so. But I think Jaden Ausberry has this will spot pretty locked up as far as trotting out there with the first 11. Mm-hmm. And he's been quietly one of Notre Dame's better and more consistent defensive players that just doesn't get a whole lot of attention. Mind you, he's playing on the same defense as Tay Johnson and Leonard Moore and Christian Gray, Drake Bowen, Boubacar, so I get it. But I think this is going to be a year where Jaden Ausberry really stands out, and we're going to be sitting talking a lot about, hey, 34 had a heck of a game. Great leader of the defense. See what Jaden Ausberry did today?
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a lot of those games this year, so he's my last guy.
And he's a guy that maybe the production doesn't match some other guys, but you're like, man, that play he made on that 3rd and 4, or that 2nd and 2 where he makes those plays. It's funny. We were having a conversation about linebackers a couple weeks ago, and it was either, I can't remember if it was during the show or on the message board, and somebody was like, I think Jaden Ausberry might start this year or something like that. And I was like, yeah. Started last year. And I don't remember if that was what they said, but it was something like they were surprised when I said Jaden Ausberry started last year. No, he didn't. Yeah, he did. He started the last 10 games of the season. He didn't start the first 2, but he was out there every game as the starting will linebacker in every game. And it's funny that there's a lot of people just didn't realize that. And he had, and I get why, but I mean, he was number 3 in snaps at linebacker in 2024, was tied for 2nd on the team in tackles for loss. He didn't have as much of that production this year because of a change in scheme, but he was number 2 in snaps this year on defense, as the starting will linebacker. So I love that one. And everybody knows I'm a big Jaden Ausberry fan. And I think I love that one. I love that one. And it's probably his best game of the year was probably the last one.
Yeah.
It was very good against Stanford. Very good. My last one's Armel Mukam. I don't feel as good about this one because I just don't know what he's going to do. But I'm also, because this is a big spring for him. And I'm gonna go with Armel just because it's more of a wishful thinking projection. I think if Armel has a breakout, if Armel and Chris Burgess can break out over the next 6 months, this D tackle group becomes just disgustingly good. Yeah. And we don't have to worry about Notre Dame going back to the portal next year at the position. And the future would look very, very bright. So I'm going to go Armel Mookum. That's my last one, Trev. That was fun, man. Like there's so many players that we could have talked. We could have talked about Luke Talich. We could have talked about, we could have talked about Jalen Sneed taking that next level of maybe taking on some of Kingston's. When Kingston comes back, really taking his game to another level. There's Keon Keeley. We didn't talk about him. DJ McKinney are certain guys because we didn't talk about transfer portal guys today. So before we wrap up, Trev, just briefly, if I was allowing you to talk about portal guys, or if you were on the show with me yesterday, just real quickly, who are some of the portal are there any of the guys on defense that you would put in breakouts? Like Francis Brew becomes like a big time player. Tion Gray takes. Who are some guys maybe that you would have wanted to talk about if you were on the show with me last week?
Yeah, I mean, Tion Gray, he's gotten a lot of recognition from like ESPN and CBS Sports as the top portal guy that Notre Dame brought in. I think that's up for debate, but I definitely think that he's up there in that discussion. I think he'll be a level 2 breakout guy, somewhere in that rotational to starter. I hesitate using the term starter, especially along the interior of Notre Dame's defensive line, because they rotate so much. I think you're going to see Tion Gray play starter level snaps, especially depending on the opponent that they play. I think you're going to see a lot more Tion Gray against Navy than you will against, say, an air raid offense, but you never know. I would put DJ McKinney into kind of that stud role. I'm hoping that we see a little bit more of the 2024 version of DJ McKinney, the much more healthier one, starting alongside just an absolute stud. Then more so the 25 version where he was battling some injuries throughout the year. So he's kind of more in that level 3 breakout for me. Same thing with Francis Brew. Brings a lot of the same skill set to the table that what Jared Dawson brought in 2025. I just think he can elevate it a little bit more. And that's not a shot at Jared Dawson. That's just how good I think Francis Brew can be in this defense. And then obviously Keon Keeley, we talked about a little bit already today. He's going to help step up into that role of that kind of defensive end breakout position that you talked about. But here's all I know, Brian. At the end of the day, you're going to need all of them. Right now on FanDuel, Notre Dame is favored to beat Wisconsin in game 1 by 16.5 points. Ideally, that's not because the final score is 50-32. That's because Wisconsin's going to struggle to hit double digits. You picking up what I'm putting down here? So you're going to need all of them. And that's what leaves me
real surprised if that game is within 16 points.
Yeah, I am too, man. I don't really see that happening either.
Real surprised.
Agreed. But
Colton Jones, he could make that an interesting one though. But yeah.
Absolutely. And you're going to need some of the breakout players that we talked about today to step up and fulfill it. Because the interesting thing that I love about this, last thing I'll say, is some of these breakouts, you mentioned Bryce Young. Yes, this is a fun segment, but practically speaking, there's guys that we talked about that have to step up and break out this season. Bryce Young has to be that because there is going to be a lot of emphasis on Boubacar Traore. There's going to be a lot of eyes on an Alabama defensive end that was playing for the Crimson Tide in the playoffs, transferring back to South Bend, a school he was recently committed to. A lot of players on this list that it would be a nice to see, but also you could argue it's a necessity for what we believe this defense could be this season. So very excited to see what they can do this year, man. Really excited.
Yep. Good stuff.
Folks, that is going to do it for part 3 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to wrap this up with a mailbag. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in the final part of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we have a daily mailbag to take us home. And this is your first one. You can always put MB or a mailbox emoji before your submission that lets us know to set your question aside. We can't go forever, so super chats do get bumped up to the top. I'm sure we have a couple of those in there, but I'm ready to get to rolling.
Yeah, we just have one from Raymond Hart, and Raymond with the super chat says, "Good to have you back, Trevor." I agree with that completely. Jim Halloran said, "For the new earbuds." I didn't want you to have to pay for them. I wanted Bose to hook me up from CJ's deal, man. That's what I was hoping for. But I appreciate you, Jim, very much, man. Jari Z Bear with a super chat says, sorry, it's been so long since I've caught a live. I've been studying and working hard. I'm about to test to become a journeyman electrician. Love IB. Man, that is awesome. I fully support that. I wish more young people would follow that route and get into the trades. It's definitely something that people don't realize how important jobs like that are to our not even economy, just our world functioning properly. Great amount of respect for you, my man, and I wish you all the best. Keep us posted on how it goes. And we have noticed you haven't been in the mailbags as much lately, so you've definitely been noticeably missed, but we completely understand why. That's a great reason to be out, but we're glad to have you back, and best of luck, brother.
From Tavis McKay, if you were asked to design a new Shamrock Series jersey and you cannot replicate anything previously done, colors, of course, can be, what concept would you go with?
So, because of where they're playing, I would want something that's sort of like an homage to the Packers, whether it's Notre Dame wearing their 1966 jerseys, which I believe I could be. Hold on one second. Let me just check something to make sure that I'm not wrong on this. But yes, the first Super Bowl that was played, which was won by the Packers, was played during the 1966 season. So it was played in January of 67. It was the 1966 season. Notre Dame also won a national championship that year, obviously with one of the greatest teams ever, greatest Notre Dame teams ever. So maybe something like that, where it's or some other type of homage to the Packers. You're playing in Lambeau. It's the most historic college football team playing in the most historic NFL football stadium. Like, a lot of people didn't like it. From here down, I loved the Yankee Stadium uniforms in 2018. Loved them. My issue was, don't mess with the helmet. Like, it should have still been gold. If you'd had a gold helmet with the pinstripe and the navy blue, like, that would have been so fire. Like, I would have loved it. But it was an homage to the Yankees. You're playing in their stadium. Of course you should give them, some sort of love in your Shamrock Series uniform. So it'd have to be something like that. It'd have to be some sort of, maybe it's there's so many different ties between Notre Dame and the Packers, and, Curly Lambeau played at Notre Dame, who's Lambeau Field's named after. So that just something that's sort of like a tip of the cap type of thing with the Packers. Maybe your uniform, you're green and gold. You wear green colors that are similar to the Packer colors, and green jersey, gold pants, gold helmet, but you've got the Packer green as your jersey or something like something like that, Trev. I'd like to see what the design would be. I don't know, because I'm not a designer. I'm not good with that kind of thing, but just something that I'd give. If I'm Kevin Plank at Under Armour, I'm giving my design team, look, we do something that stays true to Notre Dame, that shows reverence to the Packers, that doesn't mess with the helmet. Like that would be my thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. Obviously, keep the gold helmet. I would like to see something with white jersey, and then maybe the green, maybe potentially the Packers green inside of the numbers. I think that would be pretty sweet. That's kind of the extent of my design knowledge, but that's what I would go with. Yeah.
Good question.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, we joke about needing to, quote, put guys on the jug machine during the season sometimes, but how helpful is it really? What is the limit to the benefits of this kind of training for wide receivers and defensive backs?
It's tremendous help. Here's the deal. You're able to get rapid fire coaching or catching. You don't need a quarterback throwing to you. You don't have to have your quarterback's receivers coach throwing to you. You're able to line up and do all types of things. You can catch them head on, like just you're looking at it. You're able to kind of see the ball coming out with some speed. It's not like having a trainer out there throwing you a bunch of balls. No disrespect to trainers, but they're not throwing it like the jugs machine is. There's a lot of things you can do. You can face it straight. You can turn to the side. You can work on, you get on your knees and work on catching it over your head. You can get on your knees, or you can actually, I think you can tilt it enough to where you can actually catch it high. You catch it to the side. You can work on, and this is where you line up and just work on it back shoulder. There's things you can kind of turn around real quick as it's getting fired at you and you're working on the ball coming out with good timing on stop routes, and you're able to do it like rapid fire. Like you can get a ton of reps in real quick. And if you're not locked in, that ball's going to hit you right in the face or hit you right in the chest, and it's going to sting a little. So I think jug machines, if they're done properly. Now, what I don't like is I've been to practices before at Notre Dame in the past, not recently, where guys are out there just kind of going through the motions on the jugs and they're having fun and they're goofing around. No, I want you out there like locked in. I don't want you looking over here. I want you locked in. Like where you're looking it in. Like, I mean, I would do things like where I'd have, jugs balls would have numbers on them. And I want you to be telling me what that number is before you catch it. And so the way you do that is you take the football and you put the number at the tip of the ball in each, you've got the quarters of the ball, right? You got the spheres of the ball, the two, the top, two on the bottom. And at the end of the spheres where it gets to the tip of the ball, you write 7. And if I'm locked in, I can kind of see that number. You know what I mean? And how quickly can you see that number? So those are things that I would have them do, and they're incredibly helpful. And you can even do things where you could work on deep ball, because you see him doing the punts and stuff. You lower it a little bit, but you have it work on, catching the ball over your shoulder, working on deep ball. There's a ton you can do with a jugs machine. It's not just like a, get you on the jugs. It really is practically very, very helpful. Very, very helpful.
Agreed.
We did have a super chat pop up from Tyler Evans.
Appreciate you, Tyler. What do you think of Dylan McCullough as the new Oklahoma Sooners running back coach? And what do you think of Thomas Hammock leaving Northern Illinois?
With Thomas Hammock, I understand it. I just think there's a lot of coaches that are just kind of over coaching in college football. And I don't know the reasons why. If I was him, I'd be a little ticked about joining the Mountain West Conference. I think that's absolutely absurd for Northern Illinois to be joining the Mountain West Conference for football only. Like, no, man, screw that. I got to take these kids out to all these freaking crazy places out west. You know what I mean? Like, so we can get a little bit more money. Like, man, forget that. So, no, again, I've said this before. You're going to see more and more coaches do this before this thing gets fixed. As far as Dylan McCullough getting the new Sooners job, I'm happy for him. Obviously, he went to the Raiders, did a pretty good job with Ashton Genty this year, and didn't work out. Not for him, just the whole staff got let go for the most part, and so he's got an opportunity to get back to college football. I know he also had some NFL offers, and I'm happy for him. It's a great hire for Oklahoma. He's going to have a good stable of running backs, and most of their offensive line comes back, so it's a great hire. And there's obviously a relationship there. His son played at Oklahoma for a brief time. So, yeah, I think I'm happy for him. I'm glad he landed on his feet. And I imagine that the Raiders are still going to owe him some money because I'm pretty sure he signed a 2-year contract. So, no, I'm happy. I'm happy for him. Happy it worked out for him.
Yeah, for sure. Sooners got one of the best in the business. That's
no doubt about that.
From Aiden Benami, can you see why backup linebackers getting some quality minutes, the Kia brothers or whoever else?
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, Notre Dame's always played a deep rotation, Trev, and I think they'll go beyond that. Plus, I think you're going to see Notre Dame having a lot of blowouts, and they're going to get snaps in those.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you'll see them get a lot of playing time
for sure. From our guy Salt,
real quick, and for the Kia brothers, I'll be shocked if they're not both special team starters on a lot of different groups this year.
Yeah,
which is important, very important.
From our guy Salty, which quarterback is under the most pressure to succeed in the coming season?
I would say it's either. I mean, I think it's 3 quarterbacks, and I think it's the 3 guys that we have at the top of our rankings. Trev, you and I had the same 3 top guys, and I think they're all big names at big time programs. I think it's Arch Manning number 1, Dante Moore number 2, CJ Carr number 3. I think those are 3 quarterbacks with the most pressure to succeed this season.
Yeah, we share the same sentiment. I mean, those are really the 3 guys. Actually, not anymore, not with Dante Moore, but CJ Carr and Arch Manning are kind of the 2 guys that our friends over at FanDuel think have the best odds to win the Heisman Trophy this upcoming season. Dante Moore, I think, is somewhere in the top 5. But I agree with that big picture. Now, a dark horse in that I'm also going to add to this list as far as under the most pressure is Lenore Sellers at South Carolina. Shane Beamer's putting a lot of weight into his overall success as a coach is going to be on the shoulders and really the right arm, potentially legs of Lenore Sellers. And last season did not pan out the way that he thought. So I'd add him to that list as well. But predominantly, it's going to be those top three guys.
Yep, I agree.
Another one from Iden. Yes, it's early, but do you have a favorite for Notre Dame's 2027 quarterback offers? Different situation, but different approach than last year.
Not really. I mean, it's the same year. It's 27. You already got your quarterback in 27, and then you got him to classify in 2026. This is the same class that they did that with. So I don't know that it's a whole lot different. And again, different circumstances require different recruiting emphases and philosophies. So I think it's very similar to last year, actually. I mean, if you think about it, when did the first offer go out last year? Wasn't it like April? We're not that far behind. I mean, they're kind of still employing that in 28. They haven't thrown out a ton of 28 offers just yet. They haven't really made moves on that. They went out on the road in January. They visited a bunch of these kids. They've looked at film. They've gotten to know these kids, and they've said, hey, these are the kids that we want to offer. So I don't think it's a whole lot different other than the volume. As far as who my favorites are, so far I like all three of the kids they've offered. I think they all have a lot of potential. They're very different players. I think, Camden Lapati is a lot more polished maybe than Champ Mons and Davin. I think it's McDavidson. I think is Davin McDavidson. I think is the other kid's name, who played at Cardinal Mooney for Jared Clark, teammate of Elijah Golden. But he's more raw. He's more like that 6'6", and he actually reminds me of a quarterback that I'm going to bring up here in a second, CJ Bailey. We're going to have a question about CJ Bailey. It reminds me a lot of CJ Bailey coming out of high school. Maybe not quite the runner that CJ is, but a good athlete. And then Champ Mons is a guy that's got a lot of tools. Reminds me a lot of Trayvon Towns, the 28 kid that we like a lot from Oaks Christian. So, Trev, remember we saw him this summer at the Irish Invasion. Similar body type, similar kind of big, powerful, kind of forces the ball out with some zip and similar throwing motion. Like, remember how Neiman Lawrence was like real smooth and Trayvon was like just that power thrower? I think Champ is a lot like that. I'd be happy with any of those three kids. So, yeah, they're all really strong offers. I was happy with that trio. And I think we'll see some more in the 27 class as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of CJ Bailey.
From Salty, is CJ Bailey your sleeper pick? I know you recognize his potential, but others seem to be overlooking him for Heisman candidate.
No, I don't think he's a Heisman candidate. He's not my sleeper pick for the Heisman. No, because to win the Heisman, you have to be on a good team. And he won't be on a great team. And his two top receivers that were supposed to come back are both gone. They both transferred. So
yeah,
Hollywood Smothers transferred out. So no, he's not a sleeper pick for Heisman. He's a very underrated quarterback in my opinion, but he's not a Heisman candidate in my opinion this season.
Yeah, NC State as a team is going to have to figure out how to play on the road first before we start talking about Heisman candidacy for their quarterback. From Beezer 12, Washing Beard, how would Ian Book have developed under Gino Guidugli?
I honestly don't know. About the same. I think the benefit would have not been the quarterback coach. The benefit would have been the head coach. A more calm, less in your face, less just MFing, afraid to make a mistake kind of coach. I think it'd have been very different.
Yeah, agreed. From Salty, many know that Navy saved Notre Dame's existence during World War II, but how many know that trainee midshipmen were allowed to play for Notre Dame? One won the Heisman.
Probably not a lot. I didn't.
No, I did not know that either. What things do transfer players who don't arrive in time for spring camp, McKinney and Porter, do that serve as useful alternate preparation?
Porter's on campus now, so that'd be incorrect. He is on campus. He's just injured. So I would imagine that DJ McKinney is going to be in the same boat as Riley Leonard and not Riley Leonard, Malachi Fields and Bo Collins and some of those guys, where they finish their schooling up online and they're still around the team a lot. That would be my guess. I'm not 100% certain of that, but that would be my guess. But it's just really about getting in the playbook and as much as you can being into, because I remember Rod Hurd couldn't be around all the time. He actually had to be at Northwestern. He had to be there to do classes. So he would kind of be at both places. So he'd miss some things, but just being around the team as much as you can, building the relationships as much as you can, being in the playbook as much as you can, studying film and having conversation with your coaches, being in the weight room, getting, rehab as best you can, wherever you're allowed to get it. And just keep preparing. I mean, that's really all you can do. And for him, continue to get healthy. So you're doing almost all the things that the coaches are doing or the other players are doing, except the practice time. And you're still doing the same workout. You're just doing it either at Colorado or, Lifetime Fitness or Gold's Gym or something like that. You know what I mean? Like you're doing it somewhere else. You're just not doing it in Notre Dame.
Sure. From Ballpeen Shillelagh, how deep of a rotation would you personally want to see from this team in the following rooms? Wide receiver, running back, linebacker, D-line, and kicker. Just kidding about kicker.
Well, actually, I do. I would like to see Spencer Porath be the place kicker. I'd like to see Eric Schmidt be the place kicker or the kickoff guy, and then let there be a battle at punter between Eric Schmidt, Jasper Scaife, and Micah Drescher. So let the best man win. That's what I would do. The rest, Trev, wide receiver, I'd like to see a legit 6-man rotation.
Yep.
At least 5 that are heavy rotation. That's where I like to see there. Running back, I'd like to see 3. Linebacker, do what you've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it works. And then D-line, you're going to be 4 deep at defensive end, hopefully, right now. Or it could be right now. You could just be Keon's got to play both. And he's the next guy off the bench if somebody else doesn't step up, And so basically Bryce and Boubacar are the starters. And one series Keon's in for Boubacar. The next maybe he's in for Bryce. And then the next series they're in together. And then the next series, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So, unless somebody else steps up. D-tackle, I think you go at least 4 deep at D-tackle. Anything beyond that's somebody forced their way into the rotation.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I mean, they were 5 last year and it worked out pretty well before injury. So, I mean, I think you showed last year you can go 5. They played 10 defensive linemen most weeks.
Yep.
And I'm all about that.
From Salty, Mike Norvell will be calling the offensive plays for Florida State. In this specific case, and also in general, do you think this is a good idea?
Number one, if you're the best guy for your staff when it comes to being a play caller, I think you should call plays. Look what it did for Oklahoma. I mean, Brent Venables said, hey, look, with all due respect, I'm not going to hire anybody that's better than me, so I'm going to do this. In Mike Norvell's specific case, your job is on the line. I'm going down swinging. I'm going down doing it my way. Look, this is how I made my living getting here. I'm going to go down doing it my way. I have no problem with that. I think you've kind of got to do that, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, for his case specifically, yes. In general, it just depends on if your coach has a specialty or not. I wouldn't want to see Marcus Freeman calling offensive plays, but it just depends on the situation.
Mm-hmm. Got one from Pete Weber, my dude.
Which positional matchups do you think could give Notre Dame the most trouble in the playoffs among title contenders? Ohio State, Texas, Indiana, Oregon, Georgia, Texas Tech, Miami, LSU, A&M, etc.
Which positional matchups? I mean, that's a pretty broad question. I would say Ohio State and Texas are about the only 2 teams on that list that really would concern me as far as they can do some damage to your secondary. I think you could throw Miami into that conversation.
Oregon, if they're healthy.
To a degree, I just think because they're young, I don't know that Evan Stewart is a guy that I would be too concerned about, and DeCorian Moore's still kind of young. He's talented but young. Maybe. Georgia doesn't, Texas Tech doesn't, LSU doesn't, A&M doesn't. Ohio State, to me, there's nowhere else that I'm super concerned. Their corners are pretty good. Like Jermaine Matthews, Devin Sanchez, they're pretty good. The skill players in that game would be interesting. Go ahead, Trev.
By and large, my answer to all of this is the offensive line versus whatever team's defensive line is. That's just a general concern of just how they're going to be able to hold up in the trenches.
Yeah. It's an issue against Indiana. It'd be an issue against Oregon. Maybe Miami. I don't think it's an issue against A&M. I don't think it'd be an issue against LSU. Ohio State, maybe. But I guess I'm feeling in a little bit of a better mood, Trev, because of what we talked about in the second segment. You know what I mean? I'm like,
sure.
I feel a little bit better about it with Will Black and Gervie tackle than I did last year. But I don't know that any of them have an offensive line. I mean, Indiana's offensive line is probably one that right now would be like, it's a tough matchup, with who they have coming back. That would really be it. Look, I mean, at this point in time, Pete, there aren't a lot of teams that I look at them and say they have better players than Notre Dame. Or really anywhere. There aren't many. Really aren't many.
Yeah. From Justin ND Sniper, given the losses and gains Notre Dame had in the offseason, what kind of stats does Carr need to put up for Notre Dame to be a legitimate title contender?
I don't know that I have. We had a question similar to this last week, Trev, if I remember correctly, but I don't know that there's a number that I could put on that because of how dominant the team as a whole is going to be, I think. I mean, there's going to be games where CJ Carr, and I said this the other day, Trev, he could throw for 210 yards in a game. And you're like, dude only threw for 210 yards? Yeah, he played 2 quarters. He threw for 210 yards in the first half, and it was 42-0, and he didn't throw another pass in the second half. Only threw 1 pass in the second half. Went for 15 yards, and then the next play, Aeneas went 60, and they yanked him. They won a game this year where CJ Carr got on the field, and the first time he threw a pass, which he completed, they were already up 21-0 before he took a snap. So there's just going to be some times where he's not putting up the numbers. And Marcus Freeman, I want Marcus Freeman to not take his foot off the gas ever when he's playing teams. I want Notre Dame to score as many points as they can on everybody they play. But that doesn't mean leaving CJ Carr in the game until the fourth quarter when you're already up 50 like we saw Curt Cignetti do the last couple of years. I don't want to see that. And so what that's going to do is that's going to tamp down the numbers a little bit, kind of like it did a little bit for Fernando Mendoza. The difference is Notre Dame will rely on the pass more than I think Indiana relied on the pass last year. But, look, if CJ can be at, an average of 250 to 260 a game, I'm good with that. I'm going to care a lot more still having a +9 yards per attempt average. I still want to see a around 170 QBR rating. I think those are the things that I'm going to care more about. Get that completion percentage up to 68 to 70 is where I want to be. Those are numbers that I look at more so than like a yards thing. And he didn't ask about yards. He just said stats. So those are the numbers that I'll care more about. At the end of the game, CJ Carr was at 10.1 yards per attempt, at a quarterback rating of 190 and completed 73% of the passes. I don't care that he only threw for 185 yards because that 185 yards came in the first half of a 56-3 blowout. If it was a 4-quarter game at that rate, he's at 300, it'd be 330 yards or something like that. So those are the numbers I'm going to care more about.
Yeah, it's the efficiency numbers. There is no one-size-fits-all for stats across the board, and it's not just with quarterbacks. I mean, you've had running back rooms that look like Michigan in 2023 win a title, and you've also
I think StreamYard has crashed again for Trevor. He's been having some issues with StreamYard lately. And look, I just want to remind people, somebody said, you back, Trev?
Yeah.
You froze for a bit. I was explaining to people you're having some StreamYard things. But Raymond Harton said, if Carr throws for 3,900 yards, goes undefeated, and wins a title, Heisman. Look, he doesn't even have to get to that. Raymond Mendoza.
That's a new one.
I'm just reading Raymond Hartman's name. Fernando Mendoza only threw for 3,500 yards, and that includes 4 postseason games, Big Ten title game and national championship in the college football playoffs. I mean, if you look at his total yards, he was barely over 1,000 yards when he won the Heisman. If you take out the 3 playoff games, Trev, which is all what was done before the Heisman. Actually, I just added those to the numbers. Whoops, wrong button. But if you take out his playoff numbers from the 3 playoff games, he was at 2,980 yards. That can't be right. Hold on a second. That can't be right. That math isn't mathing for me. Give me a second. Make sure I added all those in correctly. No, that's right. He only threw for 2,980 yards and 33 touchdowns in the regular season plus Big Ten title game and won the Heisman. So now, do I think I've said this also this year, that ain't winning the Heisman. I don't care if you're 12-0 and you're number 1. That's not winning the Heisman this year with Dante and CJ and Arch and some of the guys that are going to be in it. That ain't winning the Heisman. But my point is, he doesn't have to throw for almost 4,000 in the regular season either if Notre Dame's running the table. The key is going to be keep those efficiency numbers high, and then you've got to play really well in the big games. That's going to be the key for the Heisman. But I don't think there's a particular yards total to get to. In fact, if Notre Dame is a championship contending team, going back to the question that was originally asked, there's going to be – you hope that the running game is still around 200 yards a game. And CJ's 250, 260, and then the backups can average, 20, 30 yards a game or whatever. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Because I'm just telling you, looking at their schedule and how good I think this team is going to be, there's going to be a lot of games where CJ Carr has 190 yards in the first half and 30 yards in the second half passing, 40 yards in the second half passing. And that's just going to happen a lot more this year than it did when Brady Quinn was an 05, because Brady needed to put up those numbers, but they were giving up points that he was playing into the fourth quarter of a lot of those blowout games because they didn't really take it away until the fourth quarter because their defense wasn't very good.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yep, 100%. Another one from Bees. In the spirit of Lent, what's something in the college football world you would like to give up next season?
Ejections for targeting. Unlimited transfers. Pick one of those two. I'll take that. There's a lot I would like to give up for college football next season.
Yeah. Injuries.
I would like for Notre Dame fans to stop caring about what people that other people say, like, oh, did you see what Josh Pate said? No, I didn't, because I don't watch a show. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe you said that. Well, if you're so mad about it, stop watching. Just like it make you a lot happier, a lot more calm. But yeah, those would be ones. Yeah, bad injuries would be great. Yeah, Chris Ash playing a read and react defense. That'd be another one.
10:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff.
There you go. That's a good one. That's a really good one. That's a really good one. Yes. No more of those. No more of those.
Got an Olympics question here from Salty. Are you interested in the Winter Olympics? And if so, what are your 3 most entertaining competitions besides curling, obviously?
I haven't watched a second of the Olympics. I was going to watch Olympics, and then they started talking about crap that they have no business talking about. And I said, fine, you clearly don't want me to watch. And I just am so sick of that crap. Just let me freaking watch sports. I don't care about your opinion about anything else other than the sport you're participating in. Seriously, that's it. I used to love speed skating. Like, I used to watch speed skating all the time in the Winter Olympics. I also used to love a lot of the skiing events, like moguls were like really fun to watch. The alpine skiers, I used to love watching them. Like, it's like, man, that is hard to do. I never got into bobsledding because it's like on TV, it's not a cool thing to watch. I think it'd be kind of cooler to watch if you could like look at the whole thing. I used to think the luge was pretty cool. I thought that'd be really fun to do. I don't know if they do that still. It's been a few years since I've, obviously watched the Olympics. But yeah, I think a lot of those speed skiing things are really fun. Like and my wife is I never was really into the snowboarding part of the Winter Olympics. They still have the snowboarding stuff, right? They still,
yeah.
I never got into that till I married her, and she's a big snowboarder. She was when we got married. So then I started watching. I was like, dude, those guys are flipping athletes. Like you have a greater appreciation for the things they do when you actually sit down and watch it. And so those were things that I used to watch, but I haven't watched any of the Olympics this year.
Yeah, I'm semi interested in the Winter Olympics. Some people might not like this, but I feel like the Winter Olympics, like 80% of it's just made up. Like in the Summer Olympics, it's like, look, dude, you got swimming, you got basketball, you have volleyball, track and field. Like I think of the Olympic sports, and like the Winter Olympics is just kind of like I think the snowboarding is dope.
Yeah.
But the announcer could have said anything as far as the tricks are concerned, and
I
just
wouldn't have had a
believed
clue.
that
He could have been reading from the back of a tricks box of cereal, and
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's like, yo, did you just see that trick he pulled off? It was a 1260 acetaminophen seared steak backflip with a McTwist, and I was like, yeah, dude, like
that
I would have believed it.
And then you start telling your friends about it. Did you see that? And he's like, dude, what are you talking about?
That's what I'm saying, man. And I'm just like, man,
like, what's the one where they ski and then shoot stuff? I'm like, what is that about?
That's what I'm saying. Like that's what I'm talking about. It's like I feel like all of the Olympic sports like that we hear about, like at the collegiate level, are in the summer, and then in the wintertime, it's.
But that's what I think is awesome about speed skating, because it's like it's winter track.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like and then you got the longer ones. Hockey is another one. When the US is good, I'll watch hockey. But like I only watch Olympic sports where Americans are like participating, because the Olympics for me are a big pro USA thing. So then when I see a bunch of athletes that are like bashing the country they represent, I'm like, well, fine, I won't watch you, because that's the primary motivation for me to watch. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm just like, just shut up. Just be like, hey man, I'm here to talk about this. And it's only our stupid media that asks those questions. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
But whatever. But yeah, the speed skating stuff, that stuff is like, I always got into that stuff.
For whatever reason, speed skating is dope. But for whatever reason, I watched for like the first time this past weekend with Lauren's grandparents. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, I thought it was on like an actual track sized skate.
No.
I watched him go around. I was like, now
see, they should have something like that for the longer events.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yep. Like that would actually be kind of cool.
The relay was hectic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when they crash, they take everybody out.
Dude, it's
like,
nuts.
There was one year, I think it was like Apollo Ono. Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah.
There's one year, like, do you remember the year like he crashed and like 3 dudes hit each other, and the guy that was like 5th won it because like right before the finish line, like 4 dudes got taken out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, that sport is intense. You know, that stuff is intense. So I used to love watching that stuff, man. Curling, I still don't understand. So it's like, what is all this stuff? Like, what are you doing? Like, are you mopping the floor? Like, wax on, wax? Like, what are you doing, and how is that impacting it? And then you've got the Canadian cheaters because they're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that on Twitter? And the Swedes and the Canadians are getting mad. I'm like, what are you guys going to do to each other? You're from Canada and Sweden. You know what I mean? Like, and each other with brooms. It just was like, and they knew they were going to cheat, so they had the video camera at the line so they could see the guy cheat. It's like, what are you talking? It's curling. This is like drama. It's awesome. I didn't watch it, but I'm seeing all this stuff on Twitter going back and forth. I'm like, oh, this is fun. But yeah, I used to love the Winter Olympics, man. I really did. And still, the greatest Olympic movie ever made, in my opinion, is Miracle. I think Chariots of Fire was about the Olympics too, wasn't it? But there haven't been a lot of great Olympic movies, but the Miracle was still, man, that's just a great movie. Did you hear the story that Kurt Russell told recently? He said the happiest moment the happiest moment he ever had in an actor is when they were doing the screening for Miracle. And remember, Herb Brooks had passed away just before the movie came out, which was super sad, tragic. They were watching the movies. One of his grandkids was watching Kurt Russell talk, and he goes, "Papa." And he's like, I knew I nailed it. He goes, I knew I nailed Herb when that happened. You know what I mean? Like, I had gotten it right. And he's like, that was one of the proudest moments of his career. Yes, Jesse Owens, there was a movie about him. That was a good one as well. But yeah, that's the only – well, there was the other one, which was kind of dumb, was the one with who's that British kid that played in The Kingsman? He was that guy that like finished like
Yeah.
Eddie the Eagle or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the only other Winter Olympics movie I'm aware of. But yeah, is figure skating that one's I used to watch figure skating a lot back when like Americans were like when they dominated it. So then it got a little bit too murderous, for me. And I was like, I'm out. You guys are crazy.
Sure.
So yeah, I used to really like watching the Winter Olympics. Speed skating was always my favorite, though. I would like to learn hockey. I just have never taken the time to learn it. So when I watch it, I don't know what's happening. And so I think that takes away from some of my enjoyment. I need to have somebody teach me hockey one of these days.
From Salty, do you think that any member of the 2026 recruiting class might start by season end and not because of injury? And if so, who?
It's possible. Would it shock me if Ian Premer started at some point? No, I wouldn't predict it. Would it shock me if one of the running backs did? No, but I'm not predicting it. Joey O'Brien, like, think about it. Your highest ranked recruit, your best recruit may be Joey O'Brien, 5-star safety. What are the odds Joey O'Brien's going to be able to get on the field as a starter without being injury related? You know what I mean? Like, you're talking about Rodney Dunham is the number 7 player in the country, 5-star recruit. There's no chance he starts this year outside of injury.
Yeah.
He's not only going to pass up Boubacar and Bryce Young, but he'd also have to pass up Keon Keeley. You know what I mean? It's just like this team is so loaded that it's really going to be hard for a 26 recruit out. I mean, honestly, your best chance to start might be Jasper Scaife and Micah Drescher.
Honestly.
I'm not even joking. Just because of how loaded this team is. I mean, Kari Adams is a 5-star corner. He's got to pass up Christian Gray, Dallas Gold, Mark Zachary, Jaden Sanders, and DJ McKinney to start. Like, it's going to be real hard. In past years, there might be 4 or 5 starters in this group. There really might. But this year, I don't predict it any will, but the couple that I mentioned are guys that maybe. Yeah. I think Ian Premer probably has the best chance because of his combination of elite talent, and that's probably the most unproven position in front of him. But then he's not an early enrollee, which I think kind of limits a little bit of that. I forgot about Cool Runnings. Somebody just said Cool Runnings. I forgot about that one. That was a Winter Olympic movie. That was a good one. You ever seen Cool Runnings? About the Jamaican bobsled team? Mm-mm. It's really good. Think about that. Jamaican bobsled. It's a true story. It's really good. It's really well done. Yeah, it's a good one. Thank you, Robert. I forgot about that one. Yeah, that's a good one. But sorry, that just randomly popped up. But yeah, it's going to be hard for any freshman, Trev, to start, barring injury.
Yeah. I mean, it's more of a testament to the state of the roster than it is the quality of athletes that they're bringing in.
It's the best class they've signed. I mean, we've said this is the best class in 20 years. Well, how am I going to start? None. Well, why? Because the guys in front of them are really good. So that's going to be tough. Got one from James Salumi.
Appreciate the super chat, James. 4th and 3 on the 50. Who gets the ball the most this year? Aeneas, James Flanagan, or Cooper Flanagan, Jordan Faison, or Jaden Greathouse?
I'm going to go Greathouse. Based on the routes that Mike Denbrock likes to run and the fact that he's a guy that is proven on the biggest stage, he's money in those moments. I mean, you talk about A&M in 2024. You talk about the plays he made against Penn State. And I mean, everybody talks about the long touchdown pass, but he had 3 huge third down catches in that game. And we've seen Denbrock a lot in those 4th and 3rd to 3 to 5 yards, likes to run those sprint outs or quick outs to the slot. So that also naturally is going to get him some opportunities to make some of those plays. So I'd probably go Jaden Greathouse on that one, Trev. What say you?
I'm actually going to go Aeneas Williams. I think that's going to be more of a testament to the interior and just the entire makeup of the offensive line than I think overall of him as a player. And I'm very high on Aeneas Williams. I think his abilities as a pass catcher as well are also going to play a factor. I agree with everything that you said about Jaden Greathouse. I might just have a little bit of PTSD from this past season, but I need to see him back and doing it again consistently before I can confidently say that'll be the go-to guy this year. From Justin ND Sniper, would you agree that the 2 freshman running backs have the highest potential of the running backs on the roster, and could their perceived upside play a role in whether they see the field this season?
Yeah. I mean, Justin, honestly, I feel like I just want to say yes to your question, but I feel like that'd be disrespectful because I think you kind of nailed it. I mean, yeah, they're the two most talented kids. There may come a time where you're just like, dude, we just got to get our studs in there. Let's just say Notre Dame is really struggling to hit the home runs. Let's say they're getting a lot of 20, 25-yard gains that should be 50.
Yeah.
They may say, hey, look, man, we got to get our dudes on the field. We got to get our dudes that can turn these into 60 on the field. I could see that.
Yeah.
I'm not predicting it because I think the three guys in front of them are really good. I think my stance on Kedron, my stance on Aeneas, and you definitely know my stance on Nolan James Jr. So it'll be tough, but I could see it to where it's like just the light goes on in week 5, and the first team defense is like, can you guys please take Javian Osborne or Jonas Walton off of the scout team because they're killing us and it's destroying our confidence as a defense. It's killing us. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I think so, man. I think you nailed it. I'm not predicting it, but I can see it.
Yeah. Yep. Same page.
This is kind of an interesting follow-up that just came up. Jim Halloran says, could the freshman running backs have a Price freshman year? That's when he obviously was going to beat out the I've said this before in the show, Trev, but I was told by actually multiple people at Notre Dame, but one coach on offense, that Jadarian Price was the way that the spring was gone. He was going to start for them at running back in 2022. And then he hurt his knee. But yes, he was going to start. He had outplayed Audric Estime and Logan Diggs in fall camp or in spring practice. Could that happen? Yes, that could happen. I'm not predicting it, but it could happen.
Sure.
Because it's not like you can say Aeneas and Kedron and Nolan James are like way better than Audric Estime and Logan Diggs and and Chris Tyree. Those are the three backs on that roster. So yeah, I could see that. Yep. Good one. Here we go.
From Sine, Cosine, Tangent, I'm ecstatic to hear the news about the offensive line. Won't count those eggs till they hatch, though. Why has it taken this long to finally get one of the 3 5-star left tackles to finally play tackle?
Well, I mean, in fairness, one of them did. I mean, Charles Jagusah started at left tackle the last game of his redshirt freshman season and was going to be the starting left tackle in 2024, but he got hurt. I mean, I can't really blame Joe Rudolph for that. He was going to start. When he came back, they moved him to guard because you had some guys out there that had kind of prepared and showed themselves ready to play. Gerby Lambert was playing tackle as a redshirt freshman, and then an injury forced him to move inside the guard. It's not like they put Gerby at guard just because. Like, I'm annoyed they did that with Will Black. I think they wasted time with him playing guard. This is really stupid to me. But with Jagusah, the intention was to play him at tackle. They moved him to guard because after his injury, some other guys had stepped up at tackle, and that's where they could get him on the field. I understand that. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I've said last year I would have probably put Jagusah at tackle and Anthony Knapp inside at guard, but hey, that's what you want to do. That's what we want to do. Gerby was just a redshirt freshman this past year, and Kedron Young was a true freshman this past year. So I don't know that I'm that fired up about it. What I'm fired up about is not that Will Black didn't start last year. It's that you wasted time playing him at guard. And, who knows what would have – here's my point. Let's say Will Black played left tackle from the day he arrived in the summer until the minute Billy Schrouth got hurt. Is there not a world where he might have shown himself ready enough to say, hey, we're just going to move Anthony to the inside now and put Will Black in there because he's our next best lineman? That could have possibly happened. So I'm not upset. I mean, look, again, right now, we're talking about a redshirt freshman and a redshirt sophomore that we're excited about being in that video. It's not like they're finally, now that he's a fifth-year senior, they finally gave him a chance to play tackle. You know what I mean? So I'm not there.
Yeah, I'm with you. A lot of it was just the circumstances that Joe Rudolph was given to work with. The only one that, to Brian's point, that I'm fired up about is Will Black not taking any reps at left tackle. Imagine where he would be now at this point if you gave him an entire freshman season at left tackle in the offseason. But now it's kind of feels like you're starting back at square. I'll call it square 1.5.
No, you're incorrect, Trevor, because Joe Rudolph said back in August that we already know that Will Black knows how to play tackle.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I forgot about that.
See, this is why I pay myself the
I
big
was just
bucks.
about to say, dude, you're in line for another raise. Hit up the boss.
Hold on. Hey, me, can I give me a raise?
Hey,
yes.
me.
You were killing it today in the show.
From Andre Tonsel, do you believe that the quarterback position is still the most important position offensively and defensively?
Well, it's not the most important position on defense, but it's if I'm just messing with you, Andre. Yeah, it's still, to me, the most important position in football. It doesn't have to be a future number 1 overall draft pick, but he's got to be a player. Will Howard got drafted in, 7th round? He's a really good college quarterback last year.
Yeah.
And he was money in the playoffs. I mean, absolute money in the playoffs last year, Trev. You could argue Will Howard didn't light it up in the regular season, but you cannot take away from what he did in the postseason last year. I mean, against Oregon, he goes for 311 yards. I mean, Tennessee goes for 300. He completes 82.8% of his passes for 311 yards. Didn't play in the fourth quarter. Against Oregon, he goes 17 of 26 for 319 yards and 3 touchdowns. His down game against Texas, he went 24 of 33, 72.7%, 289 yards, 8.8 per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. That was his down game where he didn't make as many plays.
Yeah.
And then against Notre Dame, he goes 17 of 21 for 231 yards, 81% completion rate, 11.0% completions or yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns and no picks. And he hits that huge bomb at the end of the game to ice it. So, I mean, Stetson Bennett was a really good college quarterback. You know, the only, I mean, 20, Mac Jones was the first round pick in 20, Joe Burrow in 19, Trevor Lawrence in 18. You had Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa were your quarterbacks in 2017. Deshaun Watson in 2016 wins a title. Since 2015, the only 2 quarterbacks that have won a title that weren't really good college players were J.J. McCarthy, who still was a first-round pick, shouldn't have been, but he still was a first-round pick, and Jacob Coker. So you still need pretty good quarterback play in college. I still think it's the most important position in all of college football. You're not going to win just because you have one, but I don't think you're going to win if you don't have one.
Agreed. Yeah, very much agreed. From Aaron Villarreal. Appreciate you. Welcome back, Trev. Glad to be back. Very glad to be back. Fourth quarter of the national championship, 4th and goal at the 1, down by 3, 2 seconds left. Do you risk it all or kick for OT? Honestly, I think it depends on how the game has been going. Like if momentum is on my side, I'm a go for the win kind of guy. Like if you have your opportunity to win it now, I would go for it. Because some of that is just trusting your big boys up front. On the 1 yard line, yeah. But most of the time I would go for it.
Part of it would depend on what the circumstances are. Are we coming back? Are we really rolling? You know, where we were down and we're hot, we're going to go for the win now. Are we in a situation where our defense was getting ripped up in the first half, but we've settled in and we're making a lot of stops in the second half, and we're feeling pretty good about our chances of keeping them out of the end zone, at the 25-yard line, then I might feel pretty good about it. How much do I trust my offensive line? Whose offensive line are we talking about? There's just a lot of different things and factors that go into it, Aaron, that I don't think a coach can say to you, honestly, here's what I would do in that situation, no matter what. And Trev said at the very beginning, it's like, you could see his hesitation because he's like, I can see all the scenarios of, well, what if kind of going through your head. And so that's kind of, in 2017, if I'm the Notre Dame football team, I'm going for it. Behind that offensive line with Brandon Wimbush at quarterback, I'm going for it. In other years, I may not go for it, but the point being, Trev, is like if a lot of it comes down to what do I think about my defense's ability to keep this team out of the end zone. If this team has been coming back and we've struggled in the second half offensively, but we were able to hit a big play to get down to 4th and 1. I may not want to go to overtime and risk our offense's struggles continuing. You know what I mean? Like, hey, let's win this thing now. So there's just so much that goes into what are the circumstances of our team and what are the circumstances of the game that are going to tell me that. If we were way behind and we're coming back and our defense is rolling, I may say, hey, let's not waste this comeback. Let's go to overtime. If we were up big and they came back and now we're struggling and we got to put this, then I might say, you know what? I'm not putting my defense back on the field. There's just a lot goes into it. My gut reaction is the same as Trevor's. I want to go for the win. But at the same time, it's like I've also seen that not work. Turner Gill, Miami versus Nebraska, 1984. Nebraska goes for 2. Turner Gill can't complete the pass. Ball gets broken up. Miami wins. I mean, I've seen it work as well. My gut is to go for the win.
Yeah.
And knowing if it doesn't work, you're going to get destroyed, but I don't care. There's just a lot of circumstances and a lot of information that I would need to know.
Yeah.
Before I could really tell you for sure what I would do.
And respectfully to the returning players that were a member of the 2025 Notre Dame kicking operation, I am going for it if I was Notre Dame in 2025 as well. I'm not putting that in the hands of our kicking game.
Mm-hmm.
Not a chance.
Right, but if I have Justin Yoon, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
That's the thing is like there's just so many scenarios that go into it that it just there's a lot that goes into it.
Oh, always.
What's the drive that got us to the 1?
Right.
Does it look like what the first drive looked like of the national title game? I'm going for it. Like they haven't stopped us from gaining a yard the whole drive. You know, I might go for it. There's just a lot that goes into it. But my gut reaction, Trev, like you said, your gut reaction is to go for the win. That's just kind of the way that this is the way that I'm wired.
Yep.
Last one, Trev, and I think this is an appropriate one to bring up on the last one.
From
even
Trev's,
you're not rocking the.
I'm not.
Well, it's not buy so hold day, Trev. So you can't rock the buy so hold glasses when it's not buy so hold day.
Right. Right. Well, from Trev's buy so hold glasses, there was a rumor or theory Ohio State was pacing the offense so that they wouldn't be tired or exhausted come the playoffs. Obviously, that didn't work, but could that be a viable strategy, keeping wide receivers fresh?
No. And look how that worked for them in the postseason. They scored 10 points in the Big Ten title game, and they scored 14 points in the semifinal or in the quarterfinals. Got beat. How'd that work out for them? I've said this a million times. You just can't turn the light switch on and off. What changed in 2024 that allowed them to kind of turn the light switch on? Right? It was that they finally played their game. They weren't trying not to play their game. They just weren't locked in as a team. Ryan Day finally got out of Chip Kelly's way going into the postseason. Like that's why they were able to turn it on. It wasn't like we're going to play this way all year, and then when we get to the playoffs, we're going to ramp it up. No, that's not how you win. What Ohio State did to quote unquote turn the switch on in 24 was they finally started playing their game. Right? They finally started executing and playing with fire and those type of things. That you can kind of turn the switch on if you're a team like Ohio State. But to basically build an identity that's in the regular season that's different from what you're going to do in the postseason, that is utter nonsense. And Trev, you and I said this during the year. They're not going to be able to just turn it on in the postseason. And this is something where I've defended the way Julian Sayin played in the last 2 games. You didn't ask that kid to make a big play for you all year. And then you're going to ask him to do that in Indianapolis against Indiana? You're going to ask him to do that in against Miami in the postseason? Like, no, you should have put this kid in some of those situations earlier in the year. So I think that if they did that, that is nonsense. I think what's more of a reality is, yes, they were trying to play a certain way, but I don't think they trusted their offensive line last year to really protect the quarterback the way that they needed to run the offense they ran in the past. I think that's part of it as well. But I do think there's something to that rumor. Is it to the degree that we saw? I don't know. I mean, I'd be hard-pressed to see Ryan Day did something that's completely different than what they did the year before when they won the freaking title. You know what I mean? But it would. Ohio State fans swear that's what they were doing, and if that's what they were doing, that was stupid. Because you were woefully hey, now we're playing Indiana and Miami. Let's do something we haven't done all year. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, Trev, to your point, it's weird saying your own name, but Mr. Mr. Glasses, to your submission, there's ways to keep the wide receivers fresh that don't involve limiting your offense. It's just play a deeper rotation.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, you don't. That doesn't mean you only play the same 3 to 4 guys, but then just limit the offense. It's you reach deeper into your bag of talent and put them out on the field. And so Jordan Faison and Malachi Fields aren't playing 65 of the 68 offensive snaps a game. That's how you do it. But yes, agreed completely. That is a switch that you can't just flip on and off. It's not like playing CFB 26. It's like, all right, now that I'm in the playoffs, time to really start opening up the playbook. It's not 100%. It's not like that.
Well, it's like my guy Raymond, who it's my guy. He says Sayin got exposed in his opinion, and I don't agree with that. I think Julian Sain's a good quarterback. I think that you can't ask a kid to go through a 12-game season against a soft schedule and say, we're not going to put him in tough situations. We're just going to ground and pound. I've said this a million times during the Brian Kelly era. I hated when he would go out and just run the ball down a bad team's throat. I'm like, dude, you're not going to do that next week against a good USC team. Why are you doing it against this bad Navy team? You're not getting better that way. And so when you ask Julian Sayin to run this really generic offense all year, you don't put a lot on his shoulders. And then now that we're playing the 2 best teams we've played all year, now we're going to ask you to carry the offense. That was a very unfair thing. Whereas Notre Dame said to CJ Carr, bro, we need you to kind of carry us like right now. I mean, they tried to protect him a little bit in the first half. Second, they're down 21-7. Now it's like, hey, CJ, remember, you need to let her rip. And look what he did. He let her rip. And he went back and made plays. Next week against A&M, they said, okay, CJ's legit. Let's go let him make plays. Yes, he's going to make mistakes. He threw some bad picks the first couple games. You're going to have to live with those mistakes. But the thinking is, I want him to suffer those mistakes in weeks 1 and week 3 as opposed to week 15 or the playoff or the semifinals or the championship game. And I think they did a disservice, in my opinion, to Julian Sayin last year.
Yeah, they did.
Go ahead, Trev.
Yeah, they did. They went into the Big Ten championship game and the Miami game with the same mindset that they went into the Texas game with. That's what they did. Of like, hey, let's do no harm. Take what the defense gives you. Our defense is good enough that it can stop this offense. Well, I hate to break it to you, but Miami's offense with Mark Fletcher and Malachi Toney in the playoffs, and Indiana's offense with Fernando Mendoza and Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt and their very experienced offensive line wasn't the same as Texas with a redshirt sophomore starting in really his first meaningful game. In
a whole bunch of new players, right?
Yeah, exactly. They went into it with,
and they scored 14 flipping points that game. Is that what you thought your defense was so good that you weren't going to give up more than 14 points in a game like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see that the same, man.
Yeah,
we see that the same. Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Now, IB Nation Sports Beat is going live at 5:05. First hour, it's going to be Vince and Jesse Stiers. And if you haven't gotten enough of me today, I'm going to actually be on with Vince at 6 o'clock. I'll be on with Vince at 6 p.m. tonight on IB Nation Sports Beat for Rapid Fire. So on your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But now that we're in the bulk of the offseason, and folks, believe it or not, spring ball is going to be here before you know it. So the best way to stay in tune and the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian and I are going to be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Not going to want to miss it. We're going to be talking about the defensive line some more, just in a little bit more depth. So until tomorrow, it's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.
Also going to rank the top 10 defensive lines of college football tomorrow. You don't want to miss it.